Hello and welcome. My name is Imogen, and we're streaming on Twitch and YouTube, talking as always about poetry. It's been so long, it's been a whole week without streaming. So welcome in Ishmael, Callie, Undyne Tertale. Undyne, we could read one of your poems today. I'm not like immediately jumping into reading, but I know you have a few submitted, and I think they've been sitting there in the submissions for some time now. So that's certainly an option that could happen today. Uh, Callie, did you vote 87 times in the poll? If so, it's a very choice use of your channel points. Anyway, welcome. Uh, Man, I haven't streamed in a week. This feels weird. I'm on a camera. How fun. Um, Not that I haven't had people's eyes on me this past week because I had my first show with my band. They've played together before. I joined the band, I guess at this point, a couple months ago. And 2 days ago, on Saturday, yeah, was my first show with them. And it was super sick. I got to play saxophone with a punk band, and we played punk and ska. And it was super cool and exciting. And, like, y'all, it's so fun to play in a band and have people just like right there and be dancing around. It's so different from when I played music in music school, and you're like on a stage, but everyone's quiet and you're very poised. And I like being poised sometimes. I think having poise is a good quality to maybe pursue, to think about. Uh, but like, it's just not the same as going up on stage and like just ripping on the saxophone and like improvising stuff and like eye contact with each other and the people watching and people dancing and yelling. Like, it's so cool. And I just had an immense amount of fun. If you want to find our band, there should be a video on our Instagram of me playing. So if y'all want to find us, we're called Quit Your Whining. Uh, and you can find us on Instagram. You can follow the band. You can follow me. So that's super cool. Good afternoon. I saw your clips from your show. Congrats. Y'all looked awesome. It was so fun, Tay. Welcome in. Also, welcome in, Ray. To answer your question, the concert, so awesome. I had an unbelievable amount of fun. Uh, you know, Punk is so cool, and to actually play it and be the person on stage as opposed to the people in the audience, like, crazy. Pro Leo, welcome. I wrote trash poetry like 6 years ago. Let me find it. Also, you look like both of my exes combined. Maybe both of your exes had a child together, and I am the creation of that. I can't imagine the age would work out well though. um, but yeah, you're absolutely welcome to join our Discord, Leo, and send your trash poetry. It's probably not that bad. It's probably not trash. um, uh, uh, but yeah, you're absolutely welcome to join the Discord, to send in some poetry. Yeah, thanks for the follow. What's the band's Instagram? I just joined when you mentioned it. I put the name of the I put the name of the band in chat. It's Quit Your Whinin'. Um, I don't know our actual handle. One sec. I can pull it up. I gotta like reach up here to my keyboard, which is quite silly. Uh, let me grab our Instagram link. Okay, you can find us here. Yes. Welcome. Trash could be a genre. Yeah. I think trash would be a good name for either music genre or a genre of poetry. Uh yeah, I don't know. I think the embracing of bad and the embracing of trash and smelly and garbage are all good things to do as artists. We spend an awful lot of time, some of us, focusing on what's good and what's best, and sometimes it's better just to have trash, you know. Also, hi Jessica. For those who are not aware, which I feel like I just haven't really mentioned it much on stream, tomorrow there's going to be a bonus stream for me, at least on Twitch. Not on YouTube because I don't think I can multi-stream a stream together. But there's an event hosted by the wonderful Oh Jessica, who's in chat right now, who's another streamer, and it is um the Twitch Writers Night, Twitch writing performance poetry something that I am participating in. I will be reading during that amongst I think like five other streamers. Like 10 minutes of poetry, and I know some of y'all crave to hear my actual art because I spend a lot of time on the stream talking about other people's art. So, if you want to actually hear me reading poetry like in a performance setting, then you can show up to that tomorrow at like 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jessica. Uh, you can tell I'm very sort of organized about these things. 6:30 Eastern. Thank you. And I actually wrote my little 10-minute set of poetry and talking today, so I know what I'm doing. It'll be good. Y'all, if you come by, we'll get to see other people reading and me, and its community, and people coming together to make art intentionally on a space that is really sort of unexpected to be having poetry. So pretty cool. Y'all should show up. Definitely follow Oh Jessica as well. I can do a / shout out at Oh Jessica. Follow them. I think they also play games like maybe Clover Pit and Balatro. Not that I actually know what those are really. I know Balatro has cards. My preferred card game is Magic the Gathering though. Trash poetry. You make up the philosophy of the genre. Yeah, would trash poetry go the gent direction and just be poetry with very complex rhythm? Maybe, right? If we were to make up what trash poetry is as a genre, um, hmm. I think there's definitely rhythm, very hard, aggressive, rhythmic poetry. Uh, I'm sort of thinking about words that don't actually mean anything and just are shoved together. Sometimes I feel like that when I listen to music by King Gizzard. If y'all are familiar with that band, sometimes they're just saying words that kind of sound cool together, And it could just be the extension of that where there's like no meaning whatsoever. Maybe even incorporating just like scat like spoken like tonal stuff. Uh you could even have like noise rock happening behind it and just like sheet metal scraping on each other. That'd be cool. Uh Certainly not palatable, but I guess that's the point. There's a lit mag called Trashlight Press. I'm fairly familiar with lit mags. I have not heard of Trashlight. I try to submit to lit mags here and there when I can. It sounds like maybe you do too, Kathzik. Um, but okay. Trashlight, where wild stories flicker and burn. Trashlight is a literary magazine for the feral, the rejected, the brilliantly unpublishable. We light fires with forgotten pages. We take what others won't touch. This is your home now. Man, I feel like I've just been like imposed upon. This is your home now. Like it's not a decision I even get to make. They're open for rolling submissions. That's pretty cool. So yeah, if anyone has any really stanky poetry, maybe that's a place to send it, you know. I feel like I got rejected by a poetry magazine this past week. Yeah, I submitted to Show, which is a literary journal from Arizona, or Lit Mag. They did not want my stuff. I think I'm on to like a record of like 1 in 10. I've been accepted to one thing. I've submitted to roughly 11 things all time. And I got accepted for a little queer zine that actually paid me, which is pretty impressive. Like that they managed to do that when they're just making a zine. I guess I paid some people when I made a zine though, right? So yeah, there's that. I've been rejected 253 times. That is awesome. That's like inspiring as fuck. I only started submitting to journals, mags, whatever you want to call them, in the last year. So I think let me see. So I have it here somewhere on my computer. I'm not showing anything, but I'm trying to find it. Okay. I've been accepted to one thing. I've been rejected from, looks like 10. And then I have roughly another 10 like pending submissions to things right now. That's sort of where we're at. So yeah. But I intend to continue doing it. I like submitting. It just feels fun to like polish the poem and send it off and just sort of know that it's not going to get accepted. I've submitted art and poetry a handful of times. I never got accepted. It feels daunting. It does feel daunting. I think when you just accept and you're like, I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail. I'm sending it. Screw you. It's a little less daunting, right? At which point it becomes difficult to rationalize like a paid submission, but generally it's probably better to avoid paid submissions, even though you can get like more money on that lottery chance that you get accepted. I've done a few and they rejected me. I put them in writing if you want to look, your old bad poems, your trash poems. I would appreciate it. If you posted them into the little forum that's called Stream Submissions, because that's where all the stream submissions go. Not like necessary, but it would be appreciated for my own sanity and organization. Yeah. I need to start submitting stuff. You don't need to, but it can be fun. And if you want to, do it. And it's really not that hard. And if you want a crash course, let me know. I'm happy to provide that information. I think I need to make like a document that's like Imogen's approach to submitting to stuff. I think that might help y'all. There's a link to an old stream VOD of mine in the resources forum on the Discord, which is like how to submit to literary magazines, where I like do a whole submission on stream. It's also kind of a bad, boring video, so don't watch it. It's not very succinct. I could definitely like make a real video and edit it, and it would take like 10 minutes and be way better. But that one's an hour and a half because it's on a stream. I'm currently working on my second book. The first one was slightly queer. You might fuck with it. I do like slightly queer. I would say maybe I'm more of like moderately queer. I might be slightly queer. I don't know how to judge something like that, I guess. Not done with either, but they're massive fantasy novels. That was good. I mean, good that you've like done a lot of work on those. And novels are hard. I'm like sort of trying to write a novel, dude. Like, it's so much work. I don't know how people write novels. Coming from the perspective of starting with poetry as a writer, novels are massive and terrifying. And like, Callie, you're working on your third book. Like, how have you written 2 books? It's, you know? Could you start a channel in Discord where we could share links for submissions? Well, I have the stream submissions channel, right? Oh, submissions for journals, mags, etc. Okay. Yeah, I think I sort of like, you could use the resources channel. Like, I had actually posted something in there, I guess, like a link to a poetry contest. So if you go into resources, you could do a post in there, Jessica, and I would like super love it. I think it'd be a great community thing if people were regularly posting journals that were open, because it can be so hard to juggle like what's open, what's currently taking submissions, what even should I be thinking about submitting to, because there's just so much. So I think it would be great to have that sort of thing happening right on our Discord. And I should start doing that too, because I submit every so often, right? I won the award for #1 in my county in high school for a poetry contest. They did in Georgia, and I won twice, but that was high school. Yeah, high school, it's definitely different once you're out into the ruthless, cutthroat world of relative adulthood or actual adulthood. I would say college is relative adulthood. It's a pretty safe, comfortable space to exist in, right? But yeah, I mean, congrats on that. That's super cool. And I wasn't even writing poetry in high school. I only started writing 2 years ago. And now I'm claiming I have something to say about poetry. You failed, fail again, fail better. Exactly. You just got to keep doing it. Do Bug Me About It by Kiosk. Definitely do that. My bad. You're good. Like, art scale of queerness. It's probably just not functional to put queerness on a scale. Maybe, now that I think about it more. Poetry is my attention span. Poetry attention span is hard. Like, reading poetry is kind of slow, and if poetry is your attention span, then I think you're doing well. You're doing better than most people on the internet in the modern time, I think. Yeah, it's like these two guys insanely in love, married, but it's an Amish style never kissing relationship. Their love language is burning down countries. That one was about 124,000 words. Yeah, books are insane undertakings. Okay. Love language is burning down countries. That's cool. Um, Amish style, two guys. So it's a fiery gay fantasy love story. That sounds excellent. That's really cool. The key to read lit mags. The key is to read lit mags to see what they publish. Yeah. And then it's hard because if you like to read lit mags, some of them you can only read the lit mag if you pay for their lit mag, right? Like some of them are good. Like Poetry Magazine just posts their stuff online. That being said, I do subscribe to Poetry Magazine, and it's great. And I've as of this month or last month, January, and it's really nice to like get a thing in the mail and just be able to like read new poetry. I think that's a really sick concept that just exists. But yeah, the issue is like how much capacity does one have to read poetry? Because I like, you know, uh, stream and I talk about poetry all day. Not all day, but like 3 times a week. And then I like sometimes want to read stuff on my own. And then if I want to like read from literary magazines, then I get to like read more. There's a lot of poetry to read, you know? It's hard, but I do read a lot. And they adopt a literal alien and his girlfriend. Like, this sounds crazy. Duotrope 7,000 lit mags, no fee. Love me free stuff. Stuff without a fee. That's cool. I like that. That's dope. I got the Library of America subscription and they mail to your door. It's all like classic literature. I love it. That sounds really cool. So what they are they sending you books? Are they sending you like some sort of bound thing of short stories? Like what's the deal with that? That sounds kind of cool. I think it's really novel to have things show up in the mail, like not from Amazon though. I think that's crazy. Like, I don't know. Mailed subscription services are kind of sick. I think they're fun. Um, but we also have the internet, and the internet has lots of poetry, like this channel, where we're gonna read poetry. So we're gonna actually do the reading part of this stream now, where I read something. Uh, I think. I guess the question is. So we have poetry from Mr. Aegis from Undying Tale, who's in chat. We have poetry brand new from Pro Leo. And then I think that's kind of the people who are around. Oh, Bite Kiosk. You submitted Knife Block a long time ago. I think the oldest thing in here is maybe, I guess it's Mr. Aegis, your Fox poem. I think we'll read something from Mr. Aegis if you're still around. I think you're still around. And in that case, we'll read Fox, unless you'd like me to skip that one, in which case I will probably never come back to that poem, and do one of your more recent ones you've submitted, which I think is Silencer. I think that's all you have submitted right now. And if you are in fact not around, then we'll do Bite Kiosk. But whatever we do, like afterward, if there's still time, we'll do yours, Pro Leo. But it might not happen today. It's sort of uncommon to submit something and then immediately, have me read it, because there's a whole backlog of 1,000,000 poems, and it's hard to keep up with. You're here. Either one. Fox is a companion to carry me down. Silencer is very different. Okay. So Carry Me Down was like nice and like peaceful and a meditation on death, and that was really beautiful, and nature, and I like nature. Vox is about a fox, so nature. Silencer, maybe I'll have like chat decide if you don't have a preference. um Silencer looks like, okay, I see like swords and cold and killing and death. Dread Father. Okay. So Silencer looks like pretty freaking intense. So I don't know if Twitch chat, if you just want to vote, then y'all can decide. Poem, question mark, Silencer, which is like intense and dark, or Fox, which is about a fox. And the poll's only going to last 1 minute. So cast your votes. I can't decide, but that's why y'all are here. Fox is only metaphorically about a fox. It's actually about a song stuck in my head. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, for a little preview of some words in Fox, for anyone here, not that one. Fox is like a secret song. There's like notes and counting and a wooden flute. There's golden woods and secret hymns, and it sounds very like magical, right? The poll is happening on the Twitch somehow. It should be around your chat. I don't know how it works actually, because I don't watch Twitch that much. And it's like 1-to-1. But Kazik, you said Fox in chat, so we'll take that as a vote for Fox, and we'll read Fox because the poll tied at 1-to-1. Don't see it. Oh well. I don't know. I don't really know how Twitch works, but it did exist. From What Does the Fox Say? Oh, never mind. I'm blind. Yeah, it just finished though. I just set it to be short because I want to get into the poem. Now you know how polls work. We'll do Fox. I'm kind of stoked about magic Fox stuff and Secret Woods. And yeah, so as Undyne, as Mr. Aegis said, it's a companion piece to a poem we read before on a previous stream, which words was about death. And it was this very beautiful thing about like accepting death as a return to nature. And I thought that was kind of cool. So we'll see how much I remember from that, and if we find any sort of stylistic or artistic through lines. But here's the poem. I'm going to read it. I'm going to talk about it. For those who are new, that's what we do here. I talk for a long time. It's a real yap fest on this stream, and you'll see how it goes if you stick around. Fox. A secret song still haunts my mind since I was 8 years old. When rising up from deep inside, it floods my senses, grips my soul. 4 notes, then 5, repeated thrice. Then 4 and 7 ends the tune, a lone and yearning wooden flute. For these 3 decades, it survives. Transports me to a golden wood. Please, hold on. My screen's being annoying. Transports me to a golden wood. The full leaves swirl and circle round. When as a child, lone I stood, this song and they the only sound. Invoked as my own secret hymn, as my own sacred magic spell. It makes him me as I am him, a holy place where I can dwell. I know not how this music came, but what I know is that it's me. The boy, the song, the wood the same, being him again is what I need. 4 notes, then 5, and thrice they rise, then 4 and 7, low they cry, mournful, reverent, teary-eyed, yet soaring, pure and deified. 4 notes, then 5, 3 times sustain, 4 and 7 notes all mine, from spirit stars where'er they came, I bless this mystic gift divine. I like how rhythmic it is, how danceful this poem is, given the subjects, you know, this flute, this song. I like it. I'm gonna read it a second time because we have all the time in the world for that, and I have no idea what it was about because I was just trying to get through the words. A secret song still haunts my mind since I was 8 years old. When rising up from deep inside, it floods my senses, grips my soul. 4 notes, then 5, repeated thrice, then 4 and 7 ends the tune. Alone in yearning wood and flute, for these 3 decades it survives. Transports me to a golden wood, the full leaves swirl and circle round, where, when as a child lone I stood, this song and they the only sound. Invoked as my own secret hymn, as my own sacred magic spell, it makes him me as I am him, a holy place where I can dwell. I know not how this music came, but what I know is that it's me. The boy, the song, the wood the same, being him again is what I need. 4 notes, then 5, and thrice they rise, then 4 and 7 low they cry, mournful, reverent, teary-eyed, yet soaring, pure and deified. 4 notes, then 5, 3 times sustain, 4 and 7 notes all mine, from spirit stars where'er they came, I bless this mystic gift divine. Tight rhyme scheme. Yes, tight rhyme scheme. We're just doing like a B, A, B, C, D, C, D, right? Mind, can't write in black. Mind, inside, old soul. That's funny. Old soul. It's a good connection there. Thrice. I guess we don't do it here. We have thrice, tune, flute, survives. Okay, so we like flip it. We go, C, D, D, C. Tune and flute, pretty much a rhyme, right? Wood, round, stood, sound. Him, spell, him, dwell. Came me, same need. And then we have like this rise, cry, I deified. So that's even like the rhymes going straight through, all the same. It messes up in the second stanza. I'm not sure if it messes up. I mean, what is wrong, right? It's different. I do acknowledge that, right? That this pattern here, round, sound, wood, stood, and then him, spell, dwell, is like the same pattern, and that the pattern does, in fact, break here. Obviously different. Does that mean it's wrong, that it messes up? Probably too early to know, I guess. Right? I mean, we've just read the poem twice, and, do I know if this is good, if this works with the poem. I honestly haven't spent enough time with it to really, you know, feel like I have any idea of whether this fits or not. So I think we want to give it some more time, some more consideration before we describe it as messed up, right? And it's fine if we come to the conclusion that, like, this should be the same rhyme scheme and it would be better that way. Like, that's a valid opinion. It should just be informed, right? And imperfection, I prefer that. Yeah. And imperfections are not necessarily bad, not necessarily good. They exist. This tune is, in fact, in my head. I don't know where it comes from. I've never heard it anywhere else. It almost feels like Greensleeves or something, but it has some kind of hold on me. Takes me to that place in my head from Carry Me Down. I see. A song that takes you, literally, sounds like, to another world. That's cool. There's like, I have a similar thing, and like to less of an extent because I don't remember the melody or the words or anything about it. But I remember hearing a song when I was like, around the same age, 6, 7, 8, 9, I don't know. And like I heard that song and I just loved it. I'm like, this song is awesome. And I didn't ask anyone what the song was called. And I just remember this idea of a song that I really liked. And who knows if I've heard it again? Who knows if I would still like it? But I am attached to this song that I don't remember. It lives in my brain, the idea of it. Sounds like you remember the tune, which is cool. So, I think we should talk about what the poem's about. Because it's very, vague and magical, and the time kind of goes in different directions, and we have memory and magic and wooden flutes. And I think it would be good to maybe discuss the meaning of these words. I can't wait for when I'm comfortable to use rhyme and meter in English. Oh yeah, you'll be dangerous. So, a secret song still haunts my mind since I was 8 years old. When rising up from deep inside, it floods my senses, grips my soul. I like this opening. It's just very it's very storytelling, right? We're laying out kind of exactly what's happening, not really using any metaphors. We're literally just in fairly plain language saying there's a song in my mind. It sticks with me. I still hold on to it. It grips me. And when it rises up, when I remember it, it floods my senses and grips my soul. So we also have this idea, this theme coming in of memory and of the past and of being young. And these things, I think, continue to crop up throughout the poem. Memory, youth, and, floods my senses. It's sort of overwhelming. If we're to recall back to the companion poem, To Carry Me Down, it's about a river. It's carry me down to the river, carry me down by the sea, or something like that. And so, it floods my senses. We have the deep, we have the flood. These things are maybe potentially implying the idea of water, some connection to that. Water, memory, these things are deeply associated as a symbol in general, sort of, looking into a pool of water, seeing oneself reflected, memories, seeing the future, water and time, flowing, motion, erosion, Water is very time connected, just in literature in general. And then we have this refrain That's what this is called, something that repeats multiple times in a poem, like a stanza. So we have this refrain that sort of comes back 3 times, which is similar to Carry Me Down Again. And maybe I'll pull up that poem, see if I can find it. Because we're probably going to talk about it a fair amount. And here it is. So this one has a refrain, carry me down, carry me down, carry me down to the creek. Not by the ocean or by a great sea, no mighty river for me. And we similarly in this poem have that refrain repeating 3 times, sort of with variation. Bury me now, bury me now, bury me now in the dirt. But this one's about death. It's about finding peace, being buried by a creek, somewhere peaceful, somewhere from boyhood. So these are both connecting to that same place of youth, right? I don't think we'll talk too much more about that poem, but it is there. 4 notes, then 5, repeated thrice, then 4 and 7 ends the tune. A lone and yearning wood and flute, for these 3 decades it survives. So we're sort of staying in that like storytelling element, literally describing the quality of this song, the actual rhythm, 4 notes, then 5 repeated thrice. So it's just like a pattern, 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, 5, and then 4 and 7 notes to end it. Alone and yearning wooden flute, for these 3 decades it survives. So we have, nature, wood, bringing that in. And we're going to come back to that pretty soon. Transports me to a golden wood. The full leaves swirl and circle round. When as a child lone I stood, this song and they the only sound. I think we mention a golden wood in the other poem too. Transports me to a golden wood. The full leaves swirl and circle round. When as a child lone I stood, this song and they the only sound. And it's fairly straightforward in terms of the surface meaning, right? There's this song, when it comes back, when I hear the tune, we sort of have this interjection, right? It floods my senses, and then it like gives us this tune, which we could imagine you actually remembering, actually thinking and singing. And then you sort of have to translate to where it's taking us, to this golden wood. But, we have some things here, some symbols, right? A golden wood is bringing us to autumn. Autumn has many associations, many symbols. If anyone in chat has things they would associate with autumn, feel free to toss them out. But this is like decay and death. But we also have this like golden beauty, this sort of delicate transience that happens in the fall, this like crumbling, something that is being lost. Autumn can also be like abundance and harvest. And when we're associating it with golden, a burnt wood or burnt leaves might be more implying decay and death. But a golden wood might bring us back to more like harvest, abundance, that like last bit of warmth that we hold on to. That's kind of what it implies to me, right? That we're like, it's beautiful and it's this like swirling, delicate, transient thing. It was at the time very liminal, at a time when I didn't know what I was. Liminal, something passed through, not knowing who you are. Interesting. And we do have, when as a child lone I stood. Welcome in, Sodafi. We're reading a poem by Undyne which is Mr. Aegis. Yeah, so we have like these leaves swirling around this child who's alone, and it feels in a similar way to what we have here, that they're sort of consumed, very overwhelmed, enraptured by this setting, by this scene. This song and they, the song and the leaves, the only sound. So it's like a pure immersion in the autumn, in the song, in the sounds. Invoked as my own secret hymn, as my own sacred magic spell. It makes him me as I am him, a holy place where I can dwell. So him is the boy. Right? That's sort of the only other thing we've referenced, and like arguably the song is maybe another character in this poem, but in terms of making me him, right? Memory is to go back and become that thing from before another time, to capture something else and go back to it. So it makes me him as I am him. It makes him me as I am him. To go back to that place of childhood, to return to that beauty. And I like invoked here. I like spell, because these are things that are like stated or sung or cast. And when we do them, the expectation is that they have like an effect, where, you cast the spell and it does something, and there's a magic to it. Maybe you don't quite understand how it works or why, but when you do it, it does. Right? There's something beyond the feeling of just like regular mundanity to this. So bringing in holy, bringing in magic, bringing in secret and sacred, I think do a lot, these words, to help communicate this feeling of, like you said, something liminal, something beyond reality. Not to mention like the inherent vagueness of trying to communicate song through poetry. Maybe that's like a really big, important thing in this poem, that you can never capture this song for us. No matter how much we read this poem, all this ever is a number of how many notes, how many times, maybe some idea of the tone with a flute, and the memory that it evokes. So we have an inherent vagueness in the poem itself, and I think that adds to the feeling of magic. I know not, right? Vague, not knowing. I know not how this music came, but I know that it's me. So maybe a revision to what we said earlier. But what I know is that it's me. The boy, the song, the wood the same, being him again is what I need. Do you also do book readings? Because holy, you're so in depth. Prose is hard because prose is so many more words, right? Poetry has the beauty of brevity, where I can talk about something like this so in detail, because that's poetry. It's in the details. It's in the small. I've read excerpts from like books. I've read essays, 3 pages, 1 page, 2 page, 3 pages, 4 pages, that kind of length. And I am willing to read them on stream. It's definitely not possible for me to read something like that with the same depth as I would a poem, because it would just take like 10 times longer. But I definitely do read prose on stream as well. Am I being shallow if this reminds me of Hallelujah? I heard there was a secret chord, right? Secret chord, a secret hymn that David played to please the Lord. Right? I mean, like, it makes sense. We have this idea of a secret song, something divine. Hallelujah brings in love, right? The woman on the roof. And then if we're to go with, like, the Buckley version, which is the best version of Hallelujah, right? Then we have, like, moving in you and the Holy Spirit. The Holy Dove was moving too. So then it becomes like a deified sexual love, which is a little different from this, right? And I think Hallelujah is a bit more pained, maybe, I feel. But I do see the connection for sure. I'm guessing that means we won't interpret Divine Comedy here. I started to read the Divine Comedy. I read like the first canto and it was amazing. And then I stopped. So, but like doing one canto at a time, like it actually, we probably reasonably could read the whole of Divine Comedy over an extended period of time, right? It would just be a long series. The hymn reminds me of the painting in the Goldfinch. I'm not familiar. For real, someone has been reading too much Hamnet. That's like the, isn't that it's like based on Hamlet, right? I don't know. I've heard about it. I've heard it's been like popular. I don't really know much about Hamnet though, or Hamnet, or whatever it is. I know it's Hamlet adjacent, and that it's good. Anyway, I know not how this music came. And I mean, like, so actually to go back to the Hallelujah thing, right, is like, Hallelujah has a pretty simple rhyme scheme. We can actually pull up. We're going to pull up the Buckley version because it's the good one. Hallelujah, Jeff Buckley. Right. It's better than Leonard Cohen. If you disagree, you're wrong. You know, I heard there was a secret chord that David played to please the Lord. So we have this like AA thing. Do ya fifth lift hallelujah. So that's like an ABBA, right? And we have like the thrice tuned flute survives, which I think has a pretty similar vibe to Hallelujah. And I think we just also have like similar line lengths. Well, I heard there was a secret chord. Well, I heard there was a secret chord. 8 syllables, right? A secret song still haunts my mind. 8 syllables. Since I was 8 years old. When rising up from deep inside, that's 8. And that one was 6. It floods my senses, grips my soul. So we have like, 8 and 6 syllables. The minor fall and the major lift. I think these are all 8 to 10. So a little different. But I understand hearing the similarity, Ishmael, from both content and from sound, right? My favorite part of the Divine Comedy is when the random people the author didn't like randomly his neighbor boss just shows up. I've heard that he did that, and that's pretty awesome. That's like an OG diss track, right? Poem. I know not how this music came, but what I know is that it's me. The boy, the song, the wood, the same. Bring him again. Being him again is what I need. So, we now have like this union of me, the boy, the song, the wood. And, if we're talking about that vagueness and that magical feeling that this is evoking, I think this really supports it because to me it gives that feeling of being blurry, where like these separate elements in memory sort of blur into each other. Where when I am remembering, I sort of becomes the person of the past, the boy, right? And in the past, the boy himself is sort of absorbed in the song, and the whole thing is sort of set within this swirling, magical golden wood of liminality where, you know, everything is, fuzzy and unclear. Um, and I like that. They're all one because none of them exist without the other, an experience being inseparable from the element. That makes sense too, right? Without the boy, there's no connection. Without the wood, without that setting, something is lost. Without the song, of course, there's nothing. That makes sense. I know not how this music came, but what I know is that it's me. The boy, the song, the wood, the same. Being him again is what I need. And this is a pretty common, I think, sentiment here to like, I'll do a different color, to like yearn for childhood, to want to return to that sort of purity, innocence. It's also fascinating because in this poem, we simultaneously have the ability through memory to become this boy. I, the poem I, becomes this boy, returns to that, is no different from the boy in that moment of recollection. And yet simultaneously has this sort of longing to be that thing again. And I mean, that makes sense. Memory is fleeting. To go back to the golden wood, I mean, autumn is followed by winter. It's followed by loss, decay, to no longer have the leaves. And, the narrator of this poem no longer has the leaves in that wood. So now all they can really do is like cling to what was, If Adam and Eve are one, there was no reason for her to be more than bone. Adam and Eve are one. Yeah, it's like it's sort of a good analogy to be simultaneously distinct and non-distinct at the same time, which is cool, right? Sort of like we could even talk about the Christian God and like the Trinity, where they're the same and they're one, but they're also different and entirely separate at the same time. So that's cool. Currently listening to this heavy poem while writing about a skeleton pyromancer slaughtering 20 steampunk Italian pirates. Quite the contrast, Pro Leo. Quite the contrast. So now we get this refrain again at the end of the poem. Coming back to the song, right? The only thing that I in the poem actually has, the song itself, and the thing that cannot be described or transmitted. I love that about this poem, is like the fundamental disconnect between the reader and the author and between the character is like highlighted by the fact that it's about something that a poem cannot transmit, which is sort of inherent in all poems, right? Poems probably hope to transmit emotion and are fundamentally barred by the fact that they try to use text or speech as a means to actually communicate emotion, right? Like this doesn't really work. You can never give your reader the actual feeling that you had. But then it's like this poem is trying to use, text to communicate the idea of a song, and the song is what evokes that specific emotion. So we almost have this written in degree of separation from the author, which is very, I don't know. I'm not sure if a poem has made me think about it in that way before. A poem that does that, right? And the author here wouldn't really want to. Right. It's theirs. It's secret. It would lose its magic if others could hear it. Yeah, it's my own secret hymn. Which does really make it, like, in a sense, almost like teasing the reader, where it says, like, I have this beautiful thing, and in a sense it teases the author, right? um uh but also it teases the reader, saying, I have this beautiful song, and I'll, like, sort of, give you a taste of it, but I'm not actually going to sing it for you. And instead I'll write this poem to evoke the feeling that teases me from the past. Um, and that almost maybe transmits the feeling of the author, because the author has this, disconnect from that memory that they want to be, that they want to return to, and they can't. And we, the reader, maybe want to feel the song or hear the song itself, and yet we can only have this approximation of it, like the author can only have the approximation, or the subject, the I, which sounds like it's close to the author here, but we have to make the distinction. The subject has a similar distance to their childhood, to their boyhood. It's like the whole thing's an analogy, where the reader is to the song as the subject, the I, is to their childhood. Like, it cannot be transmitted, cannot be grasped. I was attempting to make criticism. If Adam and Eve are one, there was no reason for her to be more than bone. Okay, so I think you're using that as to say, like, that this, like, that it's contradictory. I'm not sure. I think Twitch, if you're trying to make specific, I think this is just always the case. If one is trying to make specific criticism in chat to specific parts, it has to be very specific, because it's hard to communicate. Plus the temporal disconnect of, like, chat being delayed. But yeah. So we have the refrain at the end, the song again. And we have some italics, right? In this one, notably, but we don't have italics in this one. And that's an important choice, right? Because we also have italics here. And for there to be italics in two spaces but not the other is a pretty clear choice. So, and this one is slightly different than these. 4 notes, then 5, and thrice they rise. Then 4 and 7, low they cry. Mournful, reverent, teary-eyed, yet soaring, pure, and deified. So we have change from the first one, which is describing, like, the tune itself and the structure, the flute, the decades that it's survived. And now we have 4 notes, then 5, and thrice they rise. This is also like the minor fall and the major lift in Hallelujah, right? For another connection to that song. I love that song. 4 notes, then 5, and thrice they rise. Then 4 and 7, low they cry. It's like up and down motion of the song. mournful, reverent, teary-eyed, yet soaring, pure, and deified. So what we really have is like a depiction of contradiction within the song. The song has its rise and its fall. It has its crying and its reverence and its seriousness. And it has, against that, those two. It has, its soaring, pure, beautiful, fluttering leaves kind of feeling. And right, that makes sense that it would be sort of, as a whole, a bit bittersweet. Like, it can't be acknowledged without both the beauty and the freedom of the past, and also simultaneously the tragedy of the fact that it's not attainable, right? So it's this strange, very difficult to parse, self-contradictory bundle of emotions. Parts are more than the divisions of their sum, basically. Parts are more than the divisions of their sum. As referring to I'm not sure how that's I guess I'm not sure how that operates as criticism, or what you're trying to say regarding that, like, and arguably, like, the poem says this too, right? Like, each of these things is sort of beautiful and intense, but they're all like interrelated and reliant on each other, and that makes it more than it is, maybe. I'm not sure. 4 notes then 5, 3 times sustain, 4 and 7 notes all mine. So here again we have the sort of teasing, and this is where I will say sort of fox-like feeling of these notes are mine. This is my secret. This is my thing that I hold on to and stash away. From spirit stars where'er they came, I bless this mystic gift divine. So, it belongs to me, and it's beautiful and magical, and like, I have this thing, and I will hold on tight to it, because probably more than anything else, right, it's ourself and our memories and ourself and our memories and our, own personal experience, our actual, self and present and past that is us. Like, everything else can be taken. Everything else can be, pulled away from oneself. And yet you still have that thing that's yours. That immediate present and past. Very obliquely a reference to magical foxes in mythology, which I'm not super familiar with. So, the fox is a symbol. What is a symbol? A symbol is something that we just sort of say it, and it represents more than it is. And I think this is a great example, because the only thing referencing the fox directly is the title. So, they grant you wishes if caught. This one is mine. They grant wishes if caught. This one is mine. Essentially, it is like slippery, like the wind. And yeah, we have foxes as like slippery and sort of like tricky, we have them as like stealing things, both more like modern colloquially, like someone mentioned swiper, no swiping at the start of stream. But that's because they like go into nests, I think, and like eat baby things and steal them, and they're sort of like a like a hunter, but also a scavenger. They're like an opportunist, right? Um, and that sort of fits both with some of this. And then, yeah, something you can't catch. I don't know if anyone else has fox symbolism from other cultural traditions or just things that we're missing out on here or other mythologies. Or just stuff about foxes. I don't know very much about them. But yeah, if you caught it, if you caught beauty and childhood and purity, I mean, there's an interesting question there. Like, if you caught it, then what? That's sort of a question that the poem asks. Bring him again. Being him again is what I need. What would that be like to be him again? Like, is that possible? Can this moment of perfection ever be caught? And like, that gets fairly philosophical. And I don't know if people in chat have their own interpretation whether that fox can be caught, whether one can attain that beauty of childhood, that perfect innocence, the freedom of a song. In Japan, known as kitsune, in some indigenous American mythos, tricksters, but not necessarily malicious. And sometimes they favor a person or bless them. Yeah, so we have this like trickster sort of thing, similar to like a coyote, right? We definitely have that in the Southwest here with like most of the Native American mythologies is the coyote is the trickster. Not necessarily malicious, and sometimes they favor a person and bless them. So yeah, we have this like sort of contradictory trickster but blessing, not necessarily malicious, not necessarily good, something that is. And this poem ends, right? Sort of interesting. So to comment before I mentioned that there's no italics, I think that makes this last stanza feel a little more concrete. Italics are often used for thoughts, right? Internal monologue is something that gets depicted in italics pretty often, right? Within just like prose. Italics can also be like memories or quotes, usually just like something else that goes outside of what is currently being talked about. They usually take us in a different direction. And so to return to italic or to non-italics within this like 4 notes then 5 refrain, I like that, right? It brings us back out of the song. It brings us back out of the magic into the present. And we go from this like mournful, reverent, teary-eyed, yet soaring pure and deified, these big conceptual things, back to 4 then 5, 3 times sustain, right? Something continuing, something more, this word itself is more concrete. 4 and 7 notes all mine. So we come back to the self, and it's like we're coming back to the present, out of that memory. From spirit, stars, where'er they came, I bless this mystic gift, divine. So then it says, like there are some conclusions here, right? Our I, though they can't maybe always have this thing, though they don't know where it came from, though they can't hold on to it, though it's a memory they can't return to, right? They appreciate it. They bless it. And it ends with a feeling of like it is good, even for its flaws. And we were talking about that at the start of stream, right? Flaws and imperfections, and whether those are good, whether those are bad. But at least the poem itself would suggest that even if it's not perfect, even if there's some uncertainty, some tricksterness to it, it can still be appreciated. And that could be extrapolated more broadly philosophically if one wanted to affirm, that the present is fleeting and we hold on to the past, and that makes life very difficult, but that's the blessing we have, so we should appreciate it. Like one could take it in a direction like that to, inspire oneself and have that interpretation, and it certainly would be. It would be very comforting, I think. And I think that's what this poem feels like. It's uncertain and it's kind of scary, and the past is gone, and it's a little magical and heavy, but it's beautiful and it's good. And, as a companion to Carry Me Down, the other piece, which is talking about something big and scary, the biggest, scariest thing, death. Where is that poem? I lost it. Oh, it was in January. That's why. Right, that poem, when we find it, Carry Me Down, is talking about, similarly, something big and scary and unknown, that being death, and a degree of solace attained through, right, the acceptance of, like, the fact that it is, that death happens, and like also through a natural element. In this case, it's about the future, this poem, the prospect of dying. But it's inevitable and natural and sort of comes full circle. And then this one is maybe about like the death of the past and the things that are lost while we're alive. And, comes to the conclusion, well, that's the case. No matter how much you maybe revolt against it, you can never force yourself to remember that thing. You can never go back. So you just have to be like grateful for what you have. Definitely both pieces like really ooze with this feeling of gratitude for living and dying and forgetting and creating new memories. And I like that. I tend to be optimistic myself. I think being a trickster is bad in an abstract level as it is inherently about dishonesty. Maybe. That's what sometimes happens in the mythos. The trickster fox takes human form, but sometimes falls in love with a human they're playing tricks on. Yeah, so I hate when people can't follow the simplest rule of all folklore: don't have sex with non-humans. Yeah, but like the trickster is sort of conflicted. The trickster is often something that causes change and moves things forward and like adds that unexpected element that's inherent in life. Like without the trickster, things don't move forward. I think in I don't remember the specific um, folklore that it comes from, so I'll probably not cite the story. But yeah, like the trickster is very important in like the change of things. I think just as a archetype. And because if everything was expected, if everything was sort of honest and straightforward, um, I mean, that's maybe the ideal. And the trickster, while going outside of the ideal and being an unexpected, chaotic element, I think is usually necessary, right? And the trickster usually only gets like a bad rap when people don't like the change that they cause, right? Sometimes the trickster brings good, sometimes the trickster brings bad. Um, and I think that's sort of maybe it shows the flaws of people to want like specific ideals. Um, and yeah, so if you're talking about abstract sort of inherent ironclad um, you know, categorical good, then yeah, the trickster is usually bad or often bad. I think the trickster invites us like to question the sort of pure, perfect, honest good, maybe in a broad literary sense. That's often I think how the trickster can get used, right? Um, any questions about this poem? Very different from Silencer. It's a fun read through though. Okay, well, some other time we will read Silencer. But do we have any other thoughts on this poem? Any questions? Any things that didn't make sense, or we want to like dive back into? Um, that's what does he say though? What does who say? What does he say? What does he say? What does who say? Simple tricks do not die. Simple the fuck. Oh, I'm so stupid. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm a little dense sometimes. A little literal. Simple tricks do not die when you meet creatures in Turkish folklore. Recite all prayers you know, use blessings, wear red, green, and white, don't wear black and yellow, win and arguments against the creatures, which sometimes makes them want to leave. Do not have sex with them. And in so many stories, the characters are very good with the list, except for the last instruction. Yeah, I mean, maybe that's a pretty fundamental human flaw is uh we'll see magical trickster spirits or we'll see what, like Zeus taking the form of a swan, or we'll see like a sofa if you're Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance. And, we'll think like, that's the human impulse. I can have sex with that, right? But that's I love sort of the elaborate rules that folklore comes up with, like you're saying here, Ishmael, through like tradition, where green, white, and red don't wear black and yellow. Like all of these things that usually come from like other lessons and stories and stuff. The novel I'm writing includes a lot of mythological beings, so it's definitely a subject on my mind. Yeah. Uh yeah. I you sent that dream sequence in the Discord a while ago. I dug that. That was cool. Yeah, don't put your dick in that. Has been a human lesson since we invented shoes. Since before we invented shoes. Okay, before. I was wondering if you thought there was some correlation to the invention of the shoe. But no, before. Yeah, I think it's always been a thing, right? The impulse against caution. The impulse against the caution, right? Desire and safety. Sounds like we're pretty wrapped up with on this poem. I yeah, but as like a final thought, just I think the magic, I think the most important things to me about this poem, like my favorite thing, is that feeling of the author describing a subject describing a song, right? Or the author describing a song, and then the reader fundamentally not being able to get that song. And like this sort of analogy that feels like happens in the poem, it's one of those things where I think it's like the poem makes the reader feel the same way that the poem is describing, but it's like doing it through something entirely separate, which is cool. Like oftentimes we'll try to immerse the reader in a scene to get them to feel how we felt, but in this case it's almost like you can't feel the feeling, so I'll make you feel like you can't get it in the same way that I can't get it. I think that's cool. And just the magic of it, and yeah, and the gratitude. It's nice. Yep, the reader can't catch this fox. Yeah, it's awesome. So we'll read it again. Fox by Mr. Aegis, by Undyne Turtale. A secret song still haunts my mind since I was 8 years old. When rising up from deep inside, it floods my senses, grips my soul. 4 notes, then 5. Repeated thrice, then 4 and 7 ends the tune. A lone and yearning wooden flute. For these 3 decades it survives. Transports me to a golden wood. The full leaves swirl and circle round. When as a child lone I stood, this song and they, the only sound. Invoked as my own secret hymn, as my own sacred magic spell, it makes him me as I am him, a holy place where I can dwell. I know not how this music came, but what I know is that it's me. The boy, the song, the wood, the same, being him again, is what I need. 4 notes, then 5, and thrice they rise, then 4 and 7, low they cry. Mournful reverence, teary-eyed, yet soaring, pure, and deified. Deified, to rhyme with teary-eyed. I like that rhyme. 4 notes than 5, 3 times sustain. 4 and 7 notes all mine, from spirit stars where'er they came. I bless this mystic gift divine. I miss this. This is why it's good to read things again and again. A golden wood, the full leaves, like, you read it and you almost want to read it as fall leaves, and just like the similarity of the words creates an associated double meaning between this word and the golden wood. That's good writing. It starts out haunting, then becomes a hymn, a spell, and is ultimately an object of gratitude, a gift from an unknown benefactor. Yeah. And that's all art and song and everything, right? It's just gifts from the unknown, from what we can't know. And things that transport us and imprecisely transmit and taunt us with meaning. It's like I don't know. It's a piece of art about art, which is cool. Sort of meta, in a sense. One could read it that way, I guess. Yeah, that was Fox. Thank you, Undying True Tale or Mr. Aegis. I don't know which one. The VODs go on YouTube now, so I'll put, and like I edit the poems into 2 separate videos. So tell me whether you want Mr. Aegis or Undying True Tale, and also let me know. I can like link to your Twitch in the description of that, because that's what's happening now. Also, for those who are new around here, I have to like type it in, Mr. _ Aegis. Undying True Tale's channel, Mr. Aegis, is like awesome. He's like a teacher. I think you're a health teacher, right? And he streams sometimes informational stuff, sometimes just like games. His streams are good. They're a vibe. So follow him if you're not. Follow more people. Watch more Twitch. Spiral into the oblivion of online content. I'll be talking about the myth of the love languages next, and relationship psychology. I've been thinking about that stuff lately. Maybe I need to watch that stream. When is it? Tell the world. Tell the world. Yeah, that is all for that poem. And there's also a mental break coming up on stream. So, stand up, escape from the screen, get away from the evil mind virus, and like drink some water, go to the bathroom, look out the window or something. And then after the break, we'll come back, and I think I'll do your poem, Pro Leo. So yeah. Move around every hour, reduces all-cause mortality. Yes, stand up from the chair. Okay. That's all I'm gonna say. I'll be back. I'll be right back. Welcome back. It's me. I'm still here. Still alive, still kicking. Isn't that cool? That we like stay alive. Sodafi, you finally came up with a narrative for the upcoming featured poet stuff. I'm going with the theme of love, hatred, and how they intertwine, and how they encompass human nature. Seems good. That sounds very, universal. We've all experienced love and hate, right? And I think that that's cool. And you have you had that poem about love, the torch one. Yeah, I think that'll be sick. I also came up with a narrative through line for my upcoming featured poet stuff, which is tomorrow on Twitch, on Oh Jessica's channel. For those who weren't here when I mentioned at the start of the stream, tomorrow there's a Twitch Writers Night in which there are multiple of us reading stuff tomorrow at 3:30 Pacific or 6:30 Eastern time. I have 10 minutes of reading, so you can hear my poetry. I have a sort of narrative about home and belonging and gentleness in the modern age, and I'm reading 3 poems together. So that's kind of cool. By the way, I have a poem on the line as well, if it went under the radar. I just sort of live under the assumption that you always have something submitted, Ishmael, and also have to acknowledge that you're usually here a lot, so I just sort of prioritize everyone else, and then if there's less people around, I just know that I can default to one of your poems because you're usually here, which is very helpful, right? To sort of your consistency in showing up to stream and sending me poetry is very, it baffles me, really. I think it's awesome, and I appreciate it, but it's baffling. I'm just talking about words, I guess, is why. So, yes. Pro Leo, I submitted 3 short poems and a short excerpt from my book. Because I didn't know how much you'd want to read, and you could feel it out. Okay, thank you. Ishmael, is that a Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain reference? I think it's a name. I've never played Metal Gear. Okay, so we have poetic writing from a character in my second novel, which is kind of cool. That's cool to have a poem within a book. I think that's awesome. And then you have My Bee, Sorry I'm Stoned, Here You Go, Lol, which is 1 poem? 3 short poems? That's 3 poems. It's hard for me to tell where they... Oh, so that's 1 poem. There's like a page. I think, Pro Leo, what I'm going to do is just read the one that's poetic writing from a character in my second novel, if that's cool with you, because that one is submitted on its own and very easy for me to understand what I'm copying. It's 3 is just screenshots. Gotcha. Yeah, screenshots are difficult, right? I see. So it's that one. Okay, that makes sense. I was just confused by the page break on one of them, I think. Unless you do have a preference. If you have one that like you most want me to read, I can just do, you know, because as I understand it, there's like the one that starts, I don't know where to begin. One that starts, and here I go over the tribulation. And then there's the one with the page break, which I think starts on they watch and wait, tired of improv. It's not really a poem, but hopefully it's good. Well, I think people say that a lot, and then they're usually poems. Yeah. So last chance if you want me to read one of those other ones. Otherwise, I will just do the one from the novel, which is cool. That's a cool like thing. Multiple forms within a submission, at least an implied other form, sort of. But yeah, we'll probably just dwell on this one for a while, and then that'll be the end of stream. Because maybe read those two first ones you read a bit of. Okay, I'm just gonna read one. That is what's gonna happen, because as you saw, I spent a lot of time on each poem. So I'll do this one, Tribulation one, because these are the first two that I read. They are not structured, so it's not probably going to be a deep analysis. Well, don't underestimate my ability to think about things for a really long time, I guess. Do they have titles, or does this one have a title that goes, and here I go over the tribulation of decision and illusion of care? Or is it untitled? Or is it something else? A semi-titled? Hemi-titled? What if we start writing poems and we gave them 2 titles? That'd be kind of cool, right? To write a poem and that has 2 titles, and maybe like each title changes the meaning of the poem. Wouldn't that be a fun exercise? I think that'd be kind of cool, but I'm a bit of a nerd. And this is being unresponsive to my touch. Come on. Okay. Technology. Hate it. Hate it and love it. Okay. No, but the next one is called Ruin. It doesn't need a name. It insists upon itself. Okay. So this is untitled. The other one is Ruin, but we're not reading Ruin. And if this truly is, doesn't take that long, then perhaps we can look at Ruin. But we'll try to give this the time it deserves. So, an untitled poem from Pro Leo. First ever submission on stream. Thank you so much for sending it. And I will ask this because I usually ask this and forgot to ask on the last poem. Do you have any questions or context or things you would like to note before I start reading the poem? I can go into it totally blind without any of your thoughts. I can also go into it with some amount of direction from you. Either way is cool. But here it is. And here I go over the tribulation of decision and illusion of care. A carousel of Republican signs and counter offers to stupid choices. No one is ever going to want me because I hate the path of death, the path of others. I fall through sleep, awake and brazen with Christian spite to every other because I see myself dying in reverse. One step over the other, falling into the blistered sky once and over again. One step over and on to the next I fall through, burning and old. One step and on to the next. Never gets better. Always gets worse. I see who I am, and chart a map to the end, a means to an end, a meaning to the end. One step and on to the next. It never gets better, always gets worse. I see who I am and chart a map to the end, a means to an end, a meaning to the end. I want to feel how I feel when I sleep. I chart a line and cross it, falling on my next step, one step closer as I invert again, falling to my death in reverse, not being caught by the grave, but thrown. This is dope. There's some cool rhythm. You're doing some cool sound stuff. Some like carousel. You have this like fun, almost childlike song. Sounds like a game, this like one step over the other, one step over and on to the next, one step over, or one step and on to the next. Has this fun, rhythm to it. And then again, this sort of repeated. So yeah, we have like this refrain, and then we have like this mapping refrain that also gets repeated twice. And it feels very right, interconnected. Like this last line, 2 lines, stanza, couplet, this last couplet seems to call back to all sorts of things happening in the poem before it, right? Sleep, charting the line, coming back here, the steps and the next, the reverse and the falling and the death kind of happen up here, and the sleep, right? I want to feel when I sleep. So everything kind of comes very like full circle in this poem. Kind of makes sense, right? We're talking about death, the big capital D end of life, death. And that's like a circle, right? I'm going to try to zoom in on this a little bit. We'll go sort of line by line and try to keep this in the middle. Context would be that I'm practicing poetry for the in-character writing in my fantasies series. Don't really consider myself a poet. But you are a poet because you've written poetry. Okay, so this is sort of practice for, an in-character thing for your book, which is super cool, totally reasonable, and good that you're practicing and not just like throwing out first draft poetry into your novel. I think that's very respectable, right? I think most people, like if I ran into a poem in a novel, I would almost sort of expect sometimes that, it's going to be like a whatever poem because this is a novelist. But trying to make sure that poem is as good as possible is awesome. And you don't really consider yourself a poet, which, I mean, fair. Like if you're not writing that much, if you're not like doing poetry regularly, there's not so much reason to call yourself a poet. But you've written poetry and that's cool. And honestly, like more props to you for sending it to stream, because it's like not necessarily your thing, right? So I think learning how I would write poetry will help me understand the kind of voice a character would use as a separate, unique people. Oh, yeah. Because we're not just writing, right? The goal isn't just to write. That would be being a poet, right? To just write. We want to write as someone. And this is like a big, difficult goal, to sort of practice using a different voice as your own. Because, I mean, people will spend all sorts of time just trying to develop their own voice. I mean, this can take like years and hundreds of poems and all of this time. And I actually do think there are ways to probably shortcut um, having a control over voice and being able to um, sort of have a very fluid voice. I think this takes a lot of intention, but I do think it's possible to say, I want to write a poem like this, and then write it. And that's very different, I think, from how most poets write. Because most poets like find their voice and they take their time and their training, and then they try to write, their best poem, their most true, emotional, powerful poem as them, right? This is like what I do. I want to write poetry that's me. But it sounds like that's not necessarily your intention, which is kind of cool. And I think there are a lot of ways to practice this. And we'll come back to this because I want to talk about the poem itself. And maybe we can ask the question, what is your voice? What is your style? And it's hard to tell from just one poem that's like really identifiable in this poem. And maybe we can talk about like, how would one go about writing this poem in another voice? That might be something we can try to touch on. That's some pretty ambitious goals for stream, but I think it could be fun. So I'm going to read the poem a second time because you should always read the poetry multiple times, and then we'll talk. And here I go over the tribulation of decision and illusion of care. A carousel of Republican sighs. I read it as signs the first time. A carousel of Republican sighs and counter offers to stupid choices. No one is ever going to want me because I hate the path of death, the path of others. I fall through sleep, awake and brazen with Christian spite to every other because I see myself dying in reverse. One step over the other, falling into the blistered sky once and over again. One step over and onto the next, I fall through, burning and old. One step and onto the next, never gets better, always gets worse. I see who I am and chart a map to the end. A means to an end, a meaning to the end. One step and on to the next, never gets better, always gets worse. I see who I am and chart a map to the end. A means to an end. A meaning to the end. I want to feel how I feel when I sleep. I chart a line and cross it, falling on my next step, one step closer as I invert again, falling to my death in reverse, not being caught by the grave, but thrown. Untitled. So, I think we'll do a little bit, try to quickly go through, hopefully quickly, doesn't always happen quickly, like what this poem is actually saying and getting at, and maybe talk about some of like the cool sound things going on inside the poem. But then we'll shift over to this discussion. But it's important to like know this poem to talk about that stuff. So, and here I go over the tribulation of decision and illusion of care. First thing, care. You almost forget about this by the end of the poem. Care. But here I go over the tribulation, the difficulty, the effort, the trial of decision, the tribulation of decision, the difficulty in deciding, the pain, the effort in, doing anything, of action, and the illusion of care. So we posit that care is an illusion. Bringing in this question of like morality. What is care? Why does care not exist? But what we're saying, here I go toward my trial of doing something. And the illusion of care. Could also be the tribulation of decision and the tribulation of the illusion of care. I think it's probably just like the tribulation of decision, and then here I go over the illusion of care. Here I go over. We're trying to move past this, right? A carousel of Republican sighs and counteroffers to stupid choices. So we're coming back to this idea of decision, choice, stupidity brings in morality. Republican sighs and counteroffers. We can see this as Republican in the US, or we can see this as Republican as like a general form of government. A republic is arguably like kind of based on voting and like senators and stuff. So sighs and counteroffers, it's this like politicking. Either way, we're kind of talking about this like stagnant government, this sentiment of like non-change and non-action, the difficulty of coming to a decision, the tribulation of decision, counteroffers to stupid choices. And there's this issue, if we're talking like modern America, where the stuff is so stupid and outlandish that we don't go anywhere. We just don't do this, right? Yeah, I feel like reading the character excerpt would inform so much more of what I'm trying to do, lol. Here I was trying to explain the idea of someone who lives vicariously in their dreams because they are so strung out. Yeah, I mean, like, either way, like, just reading the poem of yours will, like, help us, right? If we're reading the poem, then we're just, like, it gives a place at all to start the discussion and start talking about actual poetry, right? And then we can use that as a framework for this discussion, even if we don't necessarily, even if it doesn't totally concern the content of this, right? And that's okay. Marissa, VIP Marissa, a very important Marissa, welcome in, and welcome in, Raiders. My name is Imogen. Hi, this is me. In big screen, but we're going back to the poem because that's what we do here. We talk about poetry. We're currently reading a poem from Pro Leo about death and stuff, but also having discussions about poetic voice and what that means and how we attain it and play with it. Yeah, how was your stream? Welcome. And for those, I've shouted out so many people during this stream. I feel like I've shouted out like 4 different streamers today. But if you're here in my chat and you don't follow or are not familiar with VIP Marissa, they, she, they, she, I don't remember. I'm sorry. Are cool and know a lot about mushrooms of many kinds and have a very cozy stream and often talk about philosophy, which seems to be something that we often talk about on this stream. And for those from your land, Marissa, we talk a lot about poetry, and that often means philosophy and thinking. We try to engage with stuff critically. Even if you're not a poet, we're really just trying to take words and analyze them and get meaning and value from them, which anyone can do, no matter one's familiarity with the art itself. It was good. We did art and played Mahjong. I've never played Mahjong. But we also watched a video from author Brandon Sanderson. Brandon Sanderson, fantasy. My computer is currently being held up by 2 Brandon Sanderson books, Rhythm of War and the second one in that series. He's aight. He's aight. I used to like him more than I like him now, but I've sort of moved in other directions. More of a fan of literary fiction and poetry and classics than I am fantasy anymore. Unless it's Ursula K. Le Guin. She's great. So, we're going to jump back into the poem. And I'll read these first 2 lines, and then we'll keep going through it. And here I go over the tribulation of decision and illusion of care. A carousel of Republican sighs and counter-offers to stupid choices. So we're establishing this difficulty in choosing anything in this, like, wishy-washy government non-choice. The idea that it's difficult to just do anything at all, which I think goes beyond government and into the human condition itself, arguably. If we're talking about death, probably relevant. No one is ever going to want me because I hate the path of death, the path of others. No one is ever going to want me. Slightly edgy, maybe, but, you know. Yeah, Brandon Sanderson's all right. Thank you for the bits. I appreciate it, Pro Leo. So, you know, definitely a dramatic proclamation. Very relevant topic, yeah. No one is ever going to want me. But I think it's an emotion many have felt. So not necessarily making fun of that. No one is ever going to want me because, important, because why? I hate the path of death. The path of others. And you know, this has a feeling of I'm trying to think. I don't want to pull it too much in the direction of other philosophies, but like, so we'll just say the path of others. The others we're talking about, you know, are these sighing, hemming, and hawing Republicans, be it U.S. or generally those who sort of care for the broad opinions of others. The path of others, this sort of like democratic like consideration, which maybe bogs down action, immediacy. So, and then, you know, we could also say the path of death is the path of like the American Republican, the bigot, the zealot, whatever. Making our views clear for anyone coming in here. You know, fuck ICE and all that. I presume if you're watching VIP Marissa, you're gung-ho with all that. I hate the path of death. So that could be, you know, bigotry and dogma. But that could also just be sort of engaging in externality. This poem could be very political. It could also be very personal. Just any, you know, sort of to think too much about how you are seen, to be concerned with others, and like living reactively as a counteroffer, living to, I mean, care gets into some moral question, but you know, to be concerned with identity, to be concerned with externality instead of one's internal self. The poem could definitely go in that direction. Without politics, my fantasy series is just people sword fighting and bringing each other back to life. Yeah. Fantasy wouldn't be so interesting without that stuff. Most stuff is political. Anyway, continuing. We're just trying to go through this pretty quick. I fall through sleep, awake and brazen with Christian spite. This, I will note as a line maybe ties us more directly to like America, though not necessarily, because there's a lot of Christians in other places, but Christian spite, Republicans, likely connection. I fall through sleep, awake and brazen with Christian spite to every other because I see myself dying in reverse. This is a pretty complicated line, right? I fall through sleep, literally, it seems, awake and brazen with Christian spite. 2. Every other, because I see myself dying in reverse. We're both awake and we're both asleep, right? I fall asleep awake and brazen. It's not awaking with, right? I don't think we're waking up. It reads to me as I fall through sleep, awake and brazen with Christian spite. Because, like, it wouldn't make sense to say I fall through sleep, awake, as a verb, like I awake, which isn't really a verb, it's just wake. So we'll have to read it that way. I am asleep. I am also awake with Christian spite. The Christian spite, to just like scan this sentence, is to every other, because I see myself dying in reverse. Adding in another sort of new concept to the poem. Dying in reverse. Moving toward birth, right? Moving from death toward birth, coming more to life. Yeah, I was trying to describe the most potent form of spite, and I feel like it describes that echo chamber Apache dogma. Apache. When you're asleep, you really feel that movement and charge. Yeah, when you're asleep, you really feel that movement and charge. Fall through sleep, awake and brazen. I don't know what you mean by that. When you're asleep, you really feel that movement. But, sleep, to feel in sleep is to dream. To be awake in sleep. To have this energy or this thought in sleep. I guess that's where my mind goes interpreting this, right? If you're seeing something in sleep, you are dreaming. The other thing is to be awake and to be asleep because you are subject to dogma, right? I fall through sleep, this going through the motions of belief, although I am awake and I am brazen with spite because I'm mindless. To every other because I see myself dying in reverse. And, that makes sense. I see myself dying in reverse, maybe in a Christian sense. I charge toward death, but death is rebirth, and so I don't really die in the end. There's like this confidence. And definitely something to think about is who I is here. I seems to be the zealot, the Republican sire and the Christian spiter. A little contradictory, maybe, because we have this described as like stupid choices, but this could be like a suspension into omniscient narration or something. But there's a lot going on. I'm just going to keep plowing through it, though. It's that abandonment of everything for your dreams, all in anticipation of that big sleep, not fear. I see. Giving everything over to belief. Gotcha. One step over the other, falling into the blistered sky once and over again. So we have this again, this height, right? This ambition, dreams, like you say. One step and on to the next I fall through. I fall through sleep, burning and old. This is a thing we have associated with death. Death as, you know, the candle burning oneself out. One stepping onto the next never gets better, always gets worse. And yeah, I guess if one is charging toward ambition, charging toward dream, one is just moving toward death. Well, dying in reverse, moving toward a dream. I is me 6 years ago. Okay. Good to know that it's a pretty like immediate poem to oneself. That is something important. Like, so teaching time pro Leo. I in the poem. Right? I would say in modern poetry, it is most common for I to be assumed as the poet. This is like a kind of historical context of our time, is that the majority of poetry has shifted, I would say, since the modern era to, which is like the 1900s, to confessional, to poetry of confession, where I is the poet, and the words on the page are intended to be understood as coming directly from the source, the writer. This is sort of an assumption we can make. However, it's not always the case. And sometimes we write poetry where I is someone else. And write I, but the poem's I from the perspective of God is I. I can write a poem where I is this water bottle, right? And that's like totally cool. And this actually might be something you could look at practicing, pro Leo, is writing a poem from the perspective of another something, another person, sure, but you could also write it from the perspective of an object, another thing. You could write it from the perspective of a concept. What does a poem look like if love itself is writing the poem? What does a poem look like if death itself is writing a poem? And this might help you as practice because, like you said, your goal is to sort of write as the characters in your books. And doing something like this, writing this way, not from yourself, but writing from a character, writing from another, could be helpful. Like if you literally sat, we'll just use this poem as an example, and said, I'm going to write a poem as if I am a Republican Christian zealot, let's say. Someone you don't like can be especially good because you really have to remove yourself from yourself. Or an exercise I love is like, think of the worst person in the world. Maybe that's someone who, touches children, or someone who kills something in some way or abuses animals or whatever. But to conjure up the very worst individual you can imagine. And then this is just an exercise. I learned it from someone else. And then to write not about them, but as them. And you could write prose too. That's totally fine. This could be poetry, this could be prose, this could be nonfiction, like the fiction of writing someone writing nonfiction. And this is an incredible exercise, especially if you try to escape your own style. Where you say, I write the way I write. Maybe you write with repetition because it's you. But maybe this person wouldn't write with so much repetition. They wouldn't write with the same rhythmic kind of dense wittiness that you're using here. this poem's very like things bounce off of each other. They're very interconnected. Um, yeah, identifying the ways you write and then choosing to write different could be helpful to you. Yeah. To be clear, I'm the most liberal person. Yeah, yeah. I get it. Wrote this trying to describe a concept that terrifies me. I am Christian, but not like that, lol. Yeah, so don't worry. Just trying to use strong words. Yeah, I get it. I think I can tell from like this framing. That line is enough to understand you're not like an evil person. Um so but yeah, wrote this trying to describe a concept that terrifies me. And it sounds like the concept that terrifies you is this complete turning over into like abandoned faith, right? I think you said it before as well. What did you say? I forgot. Where did you say it? I don't know. I think you sort of explained the poem. Oh, it's that abandonment of everything in your dreams, everything for your dreams, all in anticipation of that big sleep, not fear. Yeah. So, to pursue something entirely. It's a terrifying thing to like turn oneself over to that and not be critical, to not be self-critical. I see who I am and chart a map to the end, a means to an end, a meaning to the end. And this line maybe grabs that idea very succinctly, right? I see who I am, this person, and instead of like appreciating this thing, having some, sort of connection to self and thinking of oneself and one's needs, one is simply something to draw a map to the end. Life is a means to an end, everything for a goal, a meaning to the end. That, the process and the goal gives meaning to the fact that things will end. People who are entirely devoted to like, I don't know, doing something worthwhile, something that will be like remembered. The constant premonition of your utterly meaningless legacy. Yeah, legacy. Oh, more like abandonment of life for faith and dreams, hand in hand with the constant premonition of your utterly meaningless legacy. Okay. Abandonment of life. To not care about. I see. So we're like illusions of care. Abandonment of life for faith and dreams. Yeah, so okay. So if I'm understanding it correctly, then it's someone who places all meaning, right, in something ideal, something idealized, dreams, faith, something out here, right? And then basically as a response, right, to the fact that oneself is meaningless. So it's sort of like an anti-absurdism where nothing matters and one is afraid of that. So one becomes attached to things, faith, dreams, external stuff. And this mindset is very dangerous because one is like on a fundamental level has no care for life, and then like the extrapolation of that is just like do more and like sort of do like the maximalist dream. I think that's what I understand. That's what I understand it to be. Maybe I'm misinterpreting. Sorry, almost all my high school were head-splittingly grim. Well, it's high school. We do that. It's understandable. One step and on to the next never gets better, always gets worse. See who I am and try to map to the end a means to an end, a meaning to the end. I want to feel how I feel when I sleep. Unthinking, free. I chart a line and cross it, falling on my next step. One step closer as I invert again, falling to my death in reverse. Not being caught by the grave, but thrown. I want to feel how I feel when I sleep. I chart a line and cross it, falling to my next step. So, I will say, pro Leo, something useful here. This poem is very, it's very, raw, right? It's very sort of, visceral. There's a clear just, anger and frustration and this, repeated over and over again, intensity. It's, a very intense poem, right? And that is, fundamentally motivated, or let me say, yeah, the idea of everything here is this constance is literally useless. I want to fly now. It's the idea that really made me realize why I put so much real life emotion into my writing, and that needs to be controlled and understood. Yeah, the idea of everything here in this constance is literally useless. I want to fly now. Okay. It's the idea that made me realize why I put so much real life emotion into my writing, and that needs to be controlled and understood, at least for me at the time. Gotcha. And you also said something up here, which I want to call back to. I forgot where you said it. Where did you say it? I'm looking for something you said. Okay. So you said earlier, to be clear, I'm the most liberal person, but I wrote this trying to describe a concept that terrifies me. Right? And I think that is evidenced in this poem. Is, it's coming from an emotion. It's very frantic. It's very energetic. It's very intense. This poem has that quality of fear. The sort of just very impulsive, direct feeling of that. I think it does come across, that it is afraid. And I think when you're trying to write a poem as a character, and you've probably done this just writing dialogue as characters or writing stories with characters at all, is, it's hard, but, if you want your character's poem to be impactful, to be effective, to feel like it has emotion, one way to do this is to try to capture or try to understand this underlying emotion, right? If we understand this and the character's emotion and the place they're coming from and really get in their head, because this poem is very in your head. This poem is very heady. This poem is very visceral. This poem isn't really providing a lot to the reader, right? It's this is my feelings, and they are intense and they're powerful. If you want to write something that's like this, which maybe you do, maybe you don't, you would want to get into the head of the character and get their emotions. And you'd come out with something very like raw and very confessional. Also, though, you probably want to think like, would my character write like this? Because there are a lot of ways to approach poetry, and if you stick around on the stream, I think, like in many streams, or if you go watch the VODs, I think you'll notice that like there is an incredible amount of breadth in the way people write and in the way people approach poetry or seem to approach poetry and talk about their poetry, and the way people engage with and critique poetry. Like sometimes we have very different decisions between me and chat. And I think seeing that, right, exposing yourself to those things, reading lots of different people, could be very helpful, because then you can look at like your individual character in your book and you can say, you know, does this person write with an incredible amount of impulse, intuitively, where they just throw emotion down onto the page? Does this character write, how would this character approach poetry? Would they be methodical? Would they be like, I don't know, we have a person in this community in the Discord, their name is Shake My Spear. They're incredibly precise and methodical and like intentional down to the word, and they write verse, and you know, these are entirely different things. Is your character sentimental? Would they write poetry dripping with sentiment, you know, gratitude, like Mr. Aegis? This was a very like sentimental poem. You know, would your character write poetry of anger and rebellion because that's who they are? There are so many ways to write poetry. Would they write poetry to escape? Or would they write poetry to vent? Etc., etc. I think reading would they write poetry to experiment with form? Right. The list goes on. This is like 8 things. That's just in like a minute of thinking. But I think I would invite you to, one thing is to broaden, right? The more poetry you read, which I know you probably want to be reading like a lot of fantasy too, just because you write fantasy fiction. That's fair. But the more you expand outward into like different people and different styles, you'll find like the possibilities of what is possible. And I don't know how much poetry you've read, really. If you've already read a lot of poetry, then this is not maybe super helpful. But that's one way you could approach like making your character's writing better. Another thing, right, is imitation, which is a whole nother ballgame, which you could use too. Yeah, I'm mostly writing a character's manifesto who is very debated and criticized throughout. I decided to approach a motif of parents leaving letters for each of the characters in different ways. Some are diaries, recordings, and a love letter to the main character and stuff. But that manifesto is the main plot point and needs to be well written. It is like beyond my skill level. Oh, so you're trying to write this person's like poetic and philosophic like masterpiece text of their ideology, and you need to capture that. The manifesto is the message to his son in this metaphor because he's a world-altering conqueror. Okay, so let's do this one. This is another way you could do this. You know, to write like other people. One thing, you know, knowing all the options of how you could write. Imitation, though, is like the immediate practice of writing like someone else. And like this happens naturally on its own, and this happens intentionally. Where, for example, there was a point of my life where I was reading a ton of poetry by a guy named Bukowski. Who this guy is doesn't really matter. He's kind of shitty as a person. But I was reading like a ton of his poetry, and over time, my own poetry, started to like naturally sound like Bukowski. And that was kind of cool because I wasn't even really trying to write like Bukowski, but it was just like seeping into me through the context. And so one thing you could do is find someone who writes like how your character wants to write. So someone who writes like a world-ending conqueror. Now, that's sort of vague, but right, this person is probably like zealous and angry and probably like has or desires power. A lot of people like this exist, right? Arguably, you could go read manifestos. Be careful, but like you could probably go read like the Unabomber's manifesto, right? And like, so I need characters who need to sound like some empires, and that sound like heartbroken teenagers. Oh, it does have that broad fantasy scale, but I promise you it's more personal and slow, honestly. Yeah. So you need that. Fucking voice attacks. Yeah, you're good. The manifesto. Okay. So like, people who are writing manifestos are deeply ideologically impassioned. And like, there are plenty of manifestos hanging around. You can read Marx. The issue is like these things are also kind of hard to read sometimes. Marx's manifesto is not that hard. You can read like Kaczynski's manifesto. You can read like some crazy like right-wing school shooter manifesto. Like, arguably it's not the greatest reading material. You can read the manifesto of some environmentalist organization. Blah blah blah. But like, if you read these things, and probably multiple of them, you might start to pick up on like what makes a manifesto sound like a manifesto? What makes a zealot someone who believes something? What makes someone who has a cause sound like they have a cause? Because if you don't yourself, then like you gotta study. And then something else you can do, like let's say, you find one of these and they sound kind of like how you want to sound, right? I want you to read it so bad. Okay. You can, let's say you find Marx readable. You could take Marx's manifesto and read it over and over again and like study. And say, now I want to try to write something in the way that Marx writes. I want to write my manifesto like Marx in his writing style, but with my topic. That might be helpful. But yeah, I mean, it's quite the thing to approach. Yeah. You want me to read it so bad? I think that makes sense. It is sort of unrelated to this poem itself, right? Maybe we can just put it here. Boom. Now we have it. Do not call yourself my brother if you are not my armor and extension of my arms. Okay, that's kind of awesome. The world speaks of me as a bridge burner, leaving my life's vacuum before their polite time, and I would without thought destroy our bond and make you my enemy. Do not call yourself a soldier if you do not fight, if you do not tend to the weary and fortify the fortuitous. These men are far and scholarly and behave in the writing of God, but some do not live in God's light. They live under his hair above them and will not move to see him. We sit ultimate as the beasts of the world. We are the writers of God. Do not call yourself my brother. Do not call yourself a soldier. What is written in your soul defines you, and in your dreams you will see your dream either of betterment or of ruin, and that is your nature. The writing of Jack Thaliard, 8 years after the Battle of Transit. I mean, it sounds pretty impassioned, and I mean, I'm not an expert on manifestos, admittedly. You know, it's not totally my area of expertise. But I mean, this stuff, like, do not call yourself my brother if you are not, right? These things, like, I think some of these things are very effective for the feeling. We have, like, bonds and brothers and soldiers and, like, the fortuitous. We have, like, some and us. We have we and we have others, right? And I mean, I think this is just like already something you're doing well, of like when you take, like, when you become ideological on, like, a fundamental level, what you're doing, it's like identifying with an idea, an ideal, and then, like, those who are like you, who identify like you, are part of the in group, and those who don't are part of the out group, right? Republicans, Democrats. You see it on the left. You see leftists. You see Marxists who, like, mostly agree with anarchists, who, like, mostly agree with, I don't know, like, other people in the left who mostly agree with syndicalists or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And these people, like, hate each other, like, on a personal level. Like, these people don't get along because they're so focused on identifying with their in-group that everyone else becomes the out-group. Like, that's what dogma is. Dogma is identity, regardless of ideology. And so the language that's like, do not call yourself my brother, right? There's us and there's them. There's the holy, there's the writers of God, and there's the people who are, you know, acting against us. I think that stuff's, like, really good, in terms of, like, having that effect, right? I think this is the thing you're talking about, me wanting to to read. But, like, and then, like, you know, manifestos are moral. They're like, we should act this way, we should do this, this is what is right. So these things of, like, you know, I think manifestos are often action. They're like how we should act, what we should do, whether or not that's right. And maybe bringing in more, like, specific action to something like this. I mean, this is short, right? But manifestos are a call to, like, change something or act in a certain way or believe in something, right? For the Communist Manifesto, it's to rise up and cast off your chains or whatever. For Kaczynski, it's like to bomb buildings and kill innocent people in the name of the environment or something. Um, you know, like, so, and a lot of this is very like, do not call yourself this, blah, blah, blah. But I'd love to see, like, we are the people who do this. We are the people who act in the right way, you know? By the end of this book, he's largely considered a villain, but this is all his pent up rage from the first book turning him into this. He's more of a cautionary tale for his son leading into the third book. Yeah, and I love this line. The world speaks of me as a bridge burner. It's very defensive, right? Gets into this idea of identity where like people say I'm wrong, but I'm right. You know, I'm the one who's good. Whatever. Yeah, you're on the money. I should read some of that stuff. I've been reading Dostoevsky and Poliston and Neil Stevenson because I want to mind if mirror mirror the Russian Revolution. Okay, so yeah, like definitely reading stuff like that. You could also like listen to like McCarthy and like Nixon and like these like Red Scare kind of speeches. I don't know who Fred Hampton is and Neil Stevenson. Um, but like these people are really like authoritarian, dogmatic, and in fact are sort of at their time they were the rulers of the world because America is, you know, like the global superpower. Um, like arguably American politicians are a great reference for sick and twisted, um, you know, yeah, autocracy, right? Um, so those are all directions to take. Um, and I think the poetic flair is very helpful for that stuff. Marx wrote poetry. A lot of these people write poetry. Um, yeah. Uh, we are careening toward a stand up and move and rest your mind break. Um, maybe we'll talk about this a little bit more afterward because it's interesting. Um, but yeah, we're gonna take a break from this. It's interesting. There's a lot of mental stuff though. And maybe we'll talk just directly about that stuff because we've sort of moved away from poetry and that's fine because this isn't strictly a poetry channel, even though it's mostly a poetry channel. Um, so yeah, I'll be right back. And yeah. Hello. Welcome back. Welcome back. I hope that was a good break. I had a thought while taking that break. A question for you, Pro Leo. Have you read Dune? Have you read this book? Because I feel like, based on what you're trying to write, this book really falls into like a similar, feels similar, for a lot of reasons. I've seen the movies countless times, and I have 3 copies, and I've read 0 pages. Okay, so you know the general story, but the thing with Dune is I remember that at the start of a bunch of the chapters of this book, right? Oh, trying to get through Game of Thrones, that makes sense. Dune might be better. It's good that you never stop reading and never stop. Like Dune has, so I mean, you know, it's about Paul, like this guy who becomes, I mean, he rises into like the dogmatic theocratic leader of a galaxy spanning religious war, right? So like kind of fits, right? I mean, it's a fantasy book. Dune is fantasy as much as it's sci-fi about this like dictator, and his rise to that point. And the start of a bunch of the chapters have like literal quotes from like in-world historical texts, right? Quote from the collected sayings of Muad'Dib. I know this is like kind of blurry. By the Princess Irulan, right? And he's like, the concept of progress acts as a protective mechanism to shield us from the terrors of the future, right? Which is very like sort of manifesto like saying. Here's another one. Deep in the human unconscious is a pervasive need for a logical universe that makes sense, but the real universe is always one step beyond logic. So it's sort of like doing this thing of having these in-world texts that like are written by people. I wonder if there's a lore book with all of these writings. Some franchises get stuff like that. There might. But like, and since he's like literally a spiritual leader, you know, these are like, how often it is that the angry man rages denial of what his inner self is telling him, right? And I feel like it might be a great model for what you're trying to do. Oh, and then this one, right? From Muad'Dib, The Religious Issues. You cannot avoid the interplay of politics with an orthodox religion. This power struggle permeates the training, educating, and disciplining of the orthodox community. Because of this pressure, the leaders of such a community inevitably must face that ultimate internal question. To succumb to complete opportunism as a price of maintaining their rule, or risk sacrificing themselves for the sake of the orthodox ethic. Right? Like, that's literally like... that's manifesto type shit, being used, directly quoted from a book within a book. And I mean, in general, Dune is just hyper political and a very well written book, and you know, touches on all sorts of themes and power and leadership and that kind of stuff. So that might be one for you to look into as a book recommendation. I haven't read Game of Thrones, so I don't know how it stacks up against that. Um, but yeah, I'd say, if you're trying to write a manifesto, read real life source material, read how it's done otherwise in fantasy and in other genres too. Um, imitate as much as you can. Uh, and I'd say like, um, um, what was I gonna say? Dune. My brain just stopped. Not sure. Oh, I guess one thing to think about is you know, a manifesto is a life's work often. Not always, but it's like it is the concise description of a very specific ideological hill that like that person is going to die on. And I think, the more you build out the character and the more you build out their beliefs and their fears and the things that they truly rage at within your world, um, the better you'll be able to write this manifesto. And I mean, it's those are the sorts of things that like come about in real life over like years and years of ideological like radicalization. uh you could even think about, write this manifesto as if this person was writing it 50 years before the point in the story. Let's say they're 60 and they have like the inkling of this belief when they're a young person. And then like as an angry 20-year-old and then later as a 30-year-old, like how has this belief developed and changed throughout their life? Up to the point where the actual, manifesto is written, because, ideological standpoints change over time, right? Uh, I've been personally, let's say, radicalized left throughout my life. There was a point where I was like, sort of apolitical, non-aware, and then I became like socially left and accepting of like queer people and stuff because I started to interact with that. And then I became very socially left and didn't really know anything economically until I learned about like leftist economic ideas. And then I moved toward like maybe sort of like a social democrat, there should be welfare. And then I got pushed further maybe in terms of socially left when I became queer, and then that had me interact with more people who were further economically left than me, and then I got pushed in that direction. So like, economic beliefs, right? Like Rome isn't built in a day, and ideology isn't built in a day. And I'd imagine there are a lot of points in this character's life, a lot of decisions that have led them to the point of becoming ultra radicalized Lord of the World, right? So probably important to consider. I mean, world building. I also don't. I do D&D campaigns. I haven't written a novel, so I don't know how helpful this would be. Dune is fantastic and gross, and David Lynch is rolling in his grave. Game of Thrones is apparently like twice as dense, but a lot less angrily political. Yeah, Dune has an aspect of like real world connection, and sort of activism. My favorite parts of Dune is all the pupating they do later. It's very yes, not a demon worm, a god worm, Leo, a god worm. So, yeah, I want to turn into a godworm too. uh, the series starts and ends with this character's grave. So I feel like it's exactly the conflict you're describing. This whole story is his hell. Yeah, like get into that guy's head. In the first book, his writing is mainly about mercenary rights. The reason for his fame was his tactic and philosophy of only fighting fair and never overpowering the opposing force. His father was a slave, and then in the second book, 8 years later, he's lost his spouse and children. And after that part, you read he bombs a building with planes. So there is that growth in his writing already. Yeah, and I mean, it sounds like you've got a lot of this covered, and you're already going in like a really good direction. And even what I'm reading already, like the spirit is definitely there. And um you know, what I've learned so far, I'm only 21, but I've learned that for writing, all you really need to do to learn how to write is to just read and be critical um, of other people's work, of your own work. I mean, this is what I do here. Like every time I stream, I learn more about poetry on like a very personal level. This stuff teaches me stuff. And as long as you're reading and finding things that are relevant, I think getting recommendations is helpful too. Um, Finding relevant texts, engaging with them, analyzing them, saying, how can I use this in my art? Being critical of your own art and like striving to improve it. Like, you'll be fine, you know? Um, and like it sounds like you have a very strong concept for what you're doing, which is always good. It sounds like you've done a lot of world building. So, I mean, that's cool stuff. That's cool stuff. Um, you know, I want to read it if it's good. Um, is it continuing? Is what continuing? Stream? Uh, I mean, stream is currently continuing. Like, stream is, I'm still live. um, I don't know how much longer it's going to be continuing because I'm feeling the tiredness behind my eyes. Um, Overall thoughts on Untitled. I mean, it's definitely like a young poem, right? It's very like intense and raw, and I think there are um, I think the distinction between like I of the poem and the thing that is feared um, is something that was tripping me up when I was reading this, right? Um, like in terms of like actual critique. I don't often give critique, but um, I think um, so that was sort of that makes the interpretation of the poem itself a little hard, right? And that's okay. I really like the some of the sound things happening. Like I kept saying, care a carousel. I think that's very fun. Um, this like one step over repeating thing, really drilling in the idea of this like belief and the future and this like imminent sort of thing. Um, and I like the coming full circle. We didn't really like fully analyze the meaning honestly and genuinely. Sort of went off to the like off track to the stuff that you more wanted to talk about, and that's fine. Um, but uh, I think it like it's doing a lot of things well. You know, the sound, the energy, the emotion, and I think all of that a little bit muddies what it's actually trying to say which is fine, you know. The meaning is only one part of a poem, and it it very much captures that intensity. And I think that's something that happens with early poems, right? Is it's just like throwing shit at the wall, throwing emotions out onto the page. And there's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't make it like bad. Yeah, the aspiration of the poem wasn't described with welcoming language, lol. Yeah. Is there a way you could screenshot these notes and put them in the Discord? There's so much gold here for me. Yeah. And uh it's gonna go, the whole VOD will go on YouTube. So it'll stay up on YouTube, and actually what I do is I'll edit the two poems into separate videos on YouTube, and then it will all they'll get posted separately. Um, and then you'll be able to come back to it as much as you want. But I definitely can try to do a couple screenshots, and I'll put it as like a response to your post. Okay. Yeah, screenshotted. Yeah. People don't usually ask about them, presumably, I guess, because they just like go back to the videos. I don't really know how people actually engage with anything on my channel. Here, I posted them in response to poetic writing from a character in my second novel. So you have those screenshots. Are you Irish? Me too. I have Irish descent, which is why I chose the name Imogen. I am not, you know, Irish on a geographical immediate level, but I do, you know, I like Ireland. I think about that as like one of the places I'm from, I guess. I'm Irish and Italian. You're Irish and French. Cool. Every streamer I send stuff to, I take notes and send them bits in exchange. I use them like beta readers. Yeah, I mean, it's a really good thing to do. Like, sharing your work is such a powerful way to, like, you know, improve your work. And I mean, the fact that you sort of have this spirit about it, I think is an excellent sign for you as a writer, right? And like literally this is what I do every stream. So you seem like someone who probably can learn a lot just from watching someone else's stuff be critiqued if you pay attention like that. And literally like 3 times a week I'm here doing this with poetry, with people's stuff on this level of granularity, spending an hour or more with a poem. And I mean, people have said that there's a lot of valuable information in my streams. So you might find something of value. There's also, I don't know how many hundreds of hours of VODs on YouTube of mine, but there's a lot. So, you know, feel free to feast on the information that I have as much as you want, right? Because it's on the internet and it's free. 10 out of 10, you should be an English professor, honestly. I mean, I guess the thing is that to be an English professor is to work in academia, and you go get your master's and your doctorate, and it's bureaucratic and it's restrictive, because the majority of the world does not, even Americans, like the majority of the world does not have access to American universities. And that's pretty messed up. So I think my knowledge is better, you know, disseminated for free on the internet. And I've had people tell me, you know, they've learned more from me than they have in any class, and I don't want to claim that I'm better than a university degree. I don't want to claim that I have some great knowledge. I just read poetry. But you know, it would be a shame for me to put my stuff behind a cost to prohibit it. Because information should be free and available for everyone, especially when we have the internet, this beautiful tool for knowledge that then is like continually perverted and butchered by corporations to turn it into this like addictive, um, awful landscape. So, you know, get that university cost bubble grind before the bubble pops law you would make bank. um, you know, I mean, uh, I think I'm gonna keep doing this, and if Stream continues on the trajectory it does, and I, you know, get accepted for some of the fellowships and win prizes and maybe publish a book at some point, it'll eventually turn into some amount of income. Luckily, it's not pressing. I'm very fortunate. I live with my parents. They're supportive of me trying to make it with writing. So, uh, yeah, just doing what I'm doing, you know? Uh, and I think, yeah, university, later in life, you know, when I'm like 50, um, if I've like, who knows what course my life will take, right? But if I'm still writing and I'm still like inclined to teach, and some university said, you know, we want you to come lecture and teach. I mean, like, there's a pretty incredible amount of financial stability in something like that. That'd be hard to turn down. Um, but I think, like, the thing I care about with this is that it's free and accessible, you know? Agreed, yeah. If it's anything for you to think about, I think about writing as a religious activity because everything around us comes down to stories. That's why I opened that book with that being mentioned as a motif. Knowledge is the context holding everything together, and it should be nurtured and wild. Yeah, that's funny. Dune has a theme of that too, of the use of stories, and sort of religion and mythology. In Dune, you know, like the Ben Gesserit. I don't know how much it's covered in the movies, but the Bene Gesserit implant a mythology on the world of Arrakis over thousands of years before the events of the book, so that when they've bioengineered the perfect savior of the world, the Quasit's Haderach, when they come to Arrakis, all of the people will be ready and then like immediately revere them as savior. Crazy. Sorry, had to nerd out. But yeah, stories, language, communication, it's incredibly important. And the ability to communicate, the ability to be critical, to be skeptical, is something that should not be hard to access. And yet, most education, right, schools, teach one to not be skeptical. School systems generally teach, you know, an amount of like obedience and rule following, and skepticism, critical thinking, the ability to look at something, read something, and learn from it. I think like as a practice is so very rare among people. And you know, part of that is like social media and being blasted with information and being like algorithmically coddled. Um, but you know, I'd like to think that like this is a channel where I'm trying to show the process of critically thinking about something. I look at a poem, haven't looked at it before, haven't been educated by anyone on how poems work. No one taught me how to do this. I just figured it out. If you go back to my old analysis way back on the YouTube, like, it sucks. Like, it's bad. I don't know what I'm doing. And like, I don't know. I think that's such an important thing that the world needs more of. Probably. I'm not sure if poetry is the very best way I can transmit that idea, but I write poetry and that's what I'm doing and this is what I've made, so it's fine, you know? I also can't save the world on my own. Yeah. Now You're Good, Dune is dope. It's dope. Dune is so good. Writing is the power that thrives the entire world. It's like an evolutionary completion. Once the creation we're in can be altered by us talking. To me, that's magical. Yeah. It's like paying homage to our creator if we have one. Ah, that's beautiful. I mean, I'm not personally religious. I've critiqued my way out of that. I don't know if I ever was. I was a pretty skeptical, cynical kid. But I think that's beautiful. Talking and language as homage to that. That's cool. I dig that. Writing is the power that thrives in the entire world. It's like an evolutionary completion. I'm not sure if it's a completion. I might, but it is a pretty big landmark, watershed moment in life, probably, to be able to talk to each other, to make meaning, to do symbols, concrete and abstraction, to bridge that gap. It's cool stuff. Not stuff that I know a ton about, but we try. I mostly know about poetry and a little bit of philosophy, just enough to get by. I don't really want to know that much more. I know a good amount about religion. I know a ton about Christianity. I've read a lot. My novel's about a Christian person, my main character. I was an atheist, and through all of the research and introspection in my first 2 books, it feels like there is something bigger, like hugely, insanely bigger. And there is something bigger is my favorite prompt ever. There is something bigger. Well, I hope the something bigger, the acknowledgement of it, is helpful for you. So I feel like I'm not religious, but it doesn't feel right in my skin. Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, I think, like, belief is kind of the thing that separates humanity, like, or intelligent life, our version of intelligent life, from what was before. The ability to, like, place meaning in out there, and, to think past today or think past tomorrow, to, like, grapple with one's own death, with, like, concepts beyond the concrete, to step from the real into the ideal. And like, I like, there's maybe something fundamentally human about the feeling that there is something bigger, right? Um, and then you have a choice in life, maybe, to like turn oneself over to the bigger. And we make myths of the bigger, of the ideal. Um, or to look at it and say, nope, it's not real. It's a trick, and it's the beautiful trick that lets us talk and speak and um, make art. I guess my personal thing is just that, you know, I'm a creature that learned how to believe, evolved to believe, um, and now we'll use it carefully. I certainly don't place it in something. But no religions in the whole world even remotely make any sense. 1 ounce, lol. Right? Yeah. I think there are practices within religion that make sense. Prayer makes a lot of sense to me. Uh, Meditation and like the actual practice of devotion. I think those things are very understandable. Mythology is where stuff gets strange. Like you can say, okay, like praying to something out of your control to forgive you. That's, I mean, it's a very human, understandable thing to do, or to like sit and meditate and like break down the components of self. That makes sense. But then like um mythologies and cosmologies and rebirth and resurrection after 3 days. Um, you know, I mean, that's where the very angry, cynical atheist will be like, they're just telling fairy tales. Which is maybe a little aggressive and a little mean, but, you know. And also the ability to transmute information to other people. On a primal level, animals interact, but we are the species who came up with the Matrix and Dune. So, like, that's got to be God, right? Yeah, I mean, God, like the closest thing I'll get to God is like God is our ability to make gods. Um, is like a way I've thought about it before, or that like God exists as something that we do and engage in. Um, God is like the personification of the ideal. Um, but I'm not like a God as God person. That's where I'm at, roughly, right now. Now I'm working, like currently in life, I'm working on action and what to do about it, how to go about my day. Um, I've been reading the Tao a lot, the Tao Te Ching, the Tao Te Ching, which is philosophy. Even though people talk about Taoism, it's not really religious. I think people religified it, and it's kind of bad when they do that. Yeah, every culture has a method of stilling themselves to tap into something and feel the pulse going on inside us. To me, just the coincidence of all of these methodologies shows we have a soul like an organ. Yeah, like a biological constant of wanting to believe. And it was a global, unconnected development. Yeah, it's like a species thing. Um, to me, that's just insanely weird. I mean, a function of the way our mind works and the way it works differently from other minds that are less evolved. Um, I've been reading the Quran. I was gonna start reading the Quran, and then I kind of like lapsed away from it. I was reading like some history of the Quran first, and I got like halfway through that book and then just kind of trailed off. Um, Now I'm reading Marcel Proust, and then I'm reading a nonfiction book about blues in America, blues music, um, and some poetry. I'm always reading poetry, right? Uh, yeah, I read a lot too. It's like half dope, half what the fuck are y'all talking about? I mean, that's like religion, right? Like the Bible's really dope too. There's like lots of fun stuff in there, but it's also just like, I don't know. Then like a camel passes through a needle's eye. You're like, huh? But that's also the fact it was written centuries ago on another continent. Yeah. Um, and that's why mythology is cool. It's like humans did this, and they're like me, and they came up with these cool, crazy ideas and stories. Um, and it's like, I'm not better than that person. I'm not different. I'm just me and they're them. Yeah. Hey, it's Dharma Dom. Just released an album. Another one. I haven't listened to it yet. Um, but welcome in. Good things spiritually happened 2,000 years ago. And good thing spiritually happened 2,000 years ago, and we can imagine what it was like. What's good, fam? Hope we're well. I am so well. I am so. Oh, spirituality happened 2,000 years ago. uh, um, but I am great. 2 days ago, 2 days ago, I had my first show with my punk band that I joined a couple months ago, and it was my first ever time like playing a punk show, and it was like such a blast. Um and like life's been great outside of that too. Um I got accepted to teach another poetry workshop. It's happening locally. Um like I don't know, things are good. Yeah. Yo, that's awesome, right? It's so sick. Um, if you all want to find the band, if y'all are users of Instagram, I guess, you can find the band at. I'm just gonna get the link again. There's like I think one video on the page of us playing. Yeah, it's our most recent video. And you'll be able to see me jamming out on the saxophone, which is sick. um, this is my most dense work in progress. My next is just a sci-fi action story with zombies and super soldiers and stuff. Lol, action figure stuff. That's fun to like play around with guys, action figures and writing. OMG, my friend is a classical guitarist who plays the closing act at punk rock shows. Those shows are so fun. He always takes me backstage with him. That's sick. I started as a classical saxophonist. I was playing like, you know, real real contemporary like saxophone and piano and like saxophone quartet, like pieces of serious music. And I ended up stopping music school and I left college shortly after that. Did not finish. Um, and it like took me 2 years of like not playing to like recover from music school burnout. And then now I'm actually playing music for fun with like friends who are amazing people, and it's just been like such a blast. Like, yeah, it's been great. Fuck school, give me YouTube University. That's what I do here. I am part of YouTube University, teaching poetry, right? um, Dharma Dom. How else have things been? I read the Tao again in its entirety, which is like a 2 hour experience. We were just talking about that a second ago. Um, it's it's a good book. It's a great piece of philosophy. Um, I feel like since I read it, the first time, most other philosophy has become very unpalatable because it's all just nonsense compared to the Tao. Um, yeah, I want to write a story in every genre. As I'm writing that one, I'm going to be writing a very grim horror book with spies. You've got this like planned out. Wow, you seem like a very organized person. A very grim horror book with spies. They're trying to stop ghosts from taking over the world, but not Ghostbusters style. It's a playmate to the Crucible. I'm not familiar with the Crucible, but that's sick. Any wisdoms gathered? Um, I think this time, it was about. I think the things that really stuck out to me were I always really the stuff about gentleness is important to me. And in both of my reads has been important. Um and I think there were a few things maybe like early in the first 10 chapters that are like about the relationship of the body and the mind. Uh, and I don't know, it's always hard to put it to words because I read the Tao and it just like vibes. And the vibes usually hit stronger on like a deeper level than like, I don't know. I usually can't describe it afterward. Um, but I like that book a lot. Um, oh, Simplicity, like the last chapter of the Tao, really got me. Where is it? Let me pull up my books folder. The Tao. This one's good for stream too because it's a simple translation. And Twitch chat is a mindless entity. True words aren't eloquent. Eloquent words aren't true. Wise men don't need to prove their point. Men who need to prove their point aren't wise. The master has no possessions. The more he does for others, the happier he is. The more he gives to others, the wealthier he is. The Tao nourishes not by forcing, by not dominating. The master leads. Right. I the I don't know. It's a great end to the book. The stuff about water always hits when it just like starts talking about the water in like the last part of the Tao. I've read it in 2 different translations. I think that's a good thing to do with that book. I've read one that's very simple and then one that's much more technical. I think it's because it's such an interpretive thing, A former monk streamer told me Tao Te Ching has practices hidden in it. I mean, what do you mean hidden? Like anything like that you're like, oh, this is a good statement on life can be like turned into a practice by like creating a way to engage with that particular line of thought, right? Like if I say, it's beneficial to like read a poem in this way, then one can convert that into practice by like isolating it. Unless he means like literally hidden somehow, in which case that's cool. And probably doesn't translate well. Afterwards is my, not joking, cyberpunk waterworld apocalypse where 2 Amish brothers fight a South African dude. You've got so much creativity going on. You're definitely a world builder, I can tell. I'm not a world builder. Fight an African warlord who sees himself as Noah reincarnate. It's a goofy, dry humor comedy, but I thought it would be such an insanely unique premise for a buddy cop romper. Dude, brand new sentences happening. That's awesome. How are you planning your writing out like 2 years in advance? Oh no, that's 26 to 7. That's how do you plan out a year in advance? Dude, I'm here today. Like it's crazy. My personal everyday philosophy tends to be based in the Yoga Sutras, but I love the wisdom of Taoism to explain some of the bigger questions. Yeah, I mean, I find that, I mean, it's funny. I'm like very averse to that word Taoism because it's like, it's the whole like attachment to the path thing in Buddhism. But like, I also like the Tao doesn't present itself as a religion. Like the Tao is a text, and like that's all it is. It's like a just it'd be like reading like Hegel and saying like, I mean, people call themselves Hegelian, and I guess they're idiots. So there's that. And there's like Marxism. Okay, so it's not that bad, but like, it's just a text of like little poems and parables. So I'm not sure. Anyway, I'm averse to like at least I know people like, also there's Taoism and it's the whole like yin yang, like very spiritual side. But I think like the Tao as a text like pretty firmly rejects a lot of that stuff. I don't know what he meant. I assume attentional techniques, if that isn't too vague. That's kind of vague. Growing up with a Mormon mom, Orthodox dad, Krishna uncle, and QAnon grandma, I had such a weird relationship with religion growing up. Dude, that's postmodern as heck. Isn't that the origin that there were various Taos, and then Taoism was sarcastically called a Tao? I have no idea. I don't know my history. But I know that the Tao Te Ching is a great text. So I write a first chapter, a story chart, make a front cover and character profiles, and then save it in a doc and sheets. And then I usually use a kitchen timer for my writing shifting calendar in my office that shows when I need to wrap first drafts. Oh, the amount of time I spend on everything in a day, I'm usually done before the calendar date, but I'm trying to do a lot more. Dude, you're Sandersonian. You're like Stephen King. Like, it seems, I don't know, maybe you're not, but it seems to me you're one of those people that just like locks in and can write novels, and that's crazy. I'm trying to write one novel. It's just like ambling along and stumbling over itself. I like haven't contributed to it in like 2 weeks. But hey, a lot of my writing's very intuitive. For worse, not for better or for worse, just for worse. That's how I try to plan stuff out. I treat it like a job and pretend to be different employees. Dude, I mean that's awesome. I'm laughing, but like that's awesome. It's just crazy to me because it's just like not my approach. I sort of like brute force engaging with a lot of art. Like I read so much and I do stream and I engage very intentionally and very deeply with pieces of art. But when it comes to like the artistic process, the creation, it's just like, it's almost like I let the things that I learn, like whatever fades into my subconscious and sticks with me, is whatever comes out when I make art. So it's almost like a continual priming of myself for the moment when creation needs to happen. That's how my artistic process looks like. And I just want to be the most knowledgeable of myself and of art and the medium in which I'm creating, so that when I get to the point of creation, I can exist automatically and I can exist intuitively, and then the art can just like spill out. Because I don't really want to spend that much time like organizing my art. um and like art as an organized approach, and maybe that means I'm never gonna like finish the novel, but that's where I'm at. Maybe it's just because I'm a kid. I don't know. There's sort of something childish about that. Just like, oh, I'm gonna make art when I make art, you know. Either I'm doing cover art, I'm reading a specific part of a book for reference, or I'm juggling toothosauruses until my eyes bleed. I say office because I literally turned my bedroom into an office. Sick. I got one of the side characters from GTA to read my audiobook, by the way. Super big development from your first book. Dude, that's sick. Like, having someone to read your audiobook, that's cool. I would, dude, I think that's something I would love to do, to read audiobooks. I love reading out loud. I read out loud to myself when I read certain books. I read poetry out loud on my own. I read poetry out loud on stream. People tell me I'm a good reader. But like, dude, to sit and read an audiobook and record it, and then I don't know, that just seems super cool. Um and then I guess like get paid for it, you know? That'd be so cool, right? I don't know. That's awesome. Yeah, you are great at reading. People would love to listen to those. Well, thank you. Um, like I said, people say. Yeah, I try to do it enough to overwhelm myself, but at a certain point, it's just time lost. Mm. I want to get a score for each chapter break with those excerpts. I want to get a score for each chapter break with those excerpts from the book. What do you mean a score? My head is thinking musical score, and it's stuck on this association, and I'm tired, so I'm struggling to break from my associative. I want to get a score for each chapter break. In the paperback, they're accompanied by paintings of the scenes from one of the characters. I want original written music and played in my audiobook between chapters. Oh, that's sick. Wait, that's so sick. Oh. Wait, I have a recommendation. Oh, and VIP Marissa, you'll like this one too. Um, um, what is it called? There's an audio. There's a. It's a music project band. I don't know. I need to find this. About frogs. That's like both music and audiobook and short stories. Um, yeah. Okay. The project or band is called Tales Under the Oak. Tales Under the Oak. And this it's both like storytelling accompanied with music, and there's this like 3 album thing that's like the Toad King and like Swamp Kingdom and the Toad Folk and the Toad Alchemy. Oh, there's actually a bunch of them. And it's like these like beautiful fantasy journeys in like this like swamp kingdom with these like toad folk, and they speak in these like gravelly toad voices, and they say we're going to journey to the north to get the flower of magical toad something to make into a toad potion. And there's like this ambient music happening, and it's like it's so good. It's so good, y'all. So good. um they also made a I guess this person also made the soundtrack for a game called Dolmen Wood, but I don't know what that is. Yeah, anyway. Toad. I like frogs as a vibe. Y'all could see how much I just like absolutely nerded out there. I love this thing. It's so pure and beautiful. I tried to, for a minute, I was trying to write an RPG role playing game, tabletop role playing game with my friend to exist in a similar world as the Tales Under the Oak, you know, Toad world, a Toad Folk RPG, I guess, because I just was in love with the setting of like a mystical swamp with giant magical dragonflies and swamps, you know, mushrooms. They live in like mushroom houses. That's so cool. Anyway, this sounds like a trading card game. My mom would want to play them out. I mean, if it was a trading card game, I would want to play it. I'm a trading card game person. At least I'm a Magic the Gathering person. Not really other trading card games. And also not really Magic the Gathering now because it kind of sucks and I kind of got bored of it. But I've also been playing Magic for like 10 years at least. So it's more than 10 years. Probably like 12, like more than half of my life. So it's just sort of something like ingrained into me that's like a part of my understanding of the world is that I play Magic the Gathering. So there's that. Anyway, I am super hungry and I'm tired and this has been a good stream, but this stream is now on the concluding part of stream. Maybe I can see if there's someone to raid. Yeah, we'll raid Nasina because she's awesome. She's a writing streamer. I think she usually does like the co-working streams, which I don't totally hang out in that much, but she's like super friendly and she's Australian and just really like vibes, sweet person. So we dig them and we're gonna send them lots of oh, is she sewing? Oh my gosh, she's sewing right now, guys. We're gonna go raid her and she's sewing. I like sewing too. You also have 2 screenplays planned. That's crazy. You'll have to tell me more about them another time because it's time for me to go eat and it's time for y'all to send very much love to Nasina and to have a good day and to keep making art you love because that's what we can do. And you know, keep being skeptical, keep being critical, keep improving yourself, all of that. And I guess thanks for watching because yeah, that's sick. Okay, bye. Raid, click this button.